Welcome to Crime in Court. My name is Heather, and this is another episode of Wisconsin versus Zachariah Anderson, and we are already on episode 10, the trial, and we're going to be talking about witness credibility. So for the next two episodes, I have planned multiple witnesses. We're going to watch a little bit of their direct examination and then a little bit of their cross, because I want to play both sides. I don't want to be totally unfair to the witness. So I want to give them, credibility, at least the opportunity to show their credibility. Whether they do or not, that's up to you to decide. But we're just going to watch a little bit of some of the key witnesses. So we're not going to watch all the witnesses. A lot of the law enforcement stuff like that is kind of dry and boring, but we are going to watch up first is the let me get my list out. The up first is Detective Anschutz, which he was actually, I believe, the first witness of the trial as well. We're gonna do this is the second part of his direct examination. Detective Anschutz, he is the one that went to the scene and he helped collect evidence. So we're going to listen, and he observed the scene. So we're going to listen to his observations. Oop, gotta put my mic on for that. So we're going to listen to his observations about the scene first off. That's what he's going to talk about here. And again, I have this sped up to 1.5. If you need to slow it down, you can do so with the gear icon here and change your playback speed. But I would like to listen to it at 1.5 because you can hear it clearly, but it goes by a lot better, a lot faster, I think. So let's begin.
We were here, I was about to again begin to ask you about the interview that occurred on May 19th, 2020, regarding the Zachariah Anderson. And again, you've identified Zachariah Anderson as the individual here in this courtroom. Is that correct?
Correct.
And you spoke to him for about an hour and 29 minutes in total?
Yes.
And that was a question and answer format?
Yes.
And did it include the defendant also asking some questions during some of that period?
Yes, he had some.
And did you provide him any nourishment, any food or water?
We gave him water, which he requested a couple of times.
And ultimately that interview then concluded, if I got this correct, at 12:18 a.m. Does that sound right?
Yes.
Okay. So in the time period of that interview, did you provide any threats or promises to the defendant to get him to provide any information?
No.
Did he provide that information? Did he answer some of the questions you asked at least?
Yes.
All right. And did you at some point have occasion to talk about a phone that purportedly appeared to have ended up in a car driven by his ex-girlfriend, Sadie Beecham?
Yes, I did.
And was this something that you asked him about?
Yes.
And what do you recall him telling you about whether he had intentionally placed that phone or some other explanation?
So Zach had said, Mr. Anderson said that Ms. Beecham had dropped the kids off at his residence, and during the course of taking his son out of the back seat, he believed that this cell phone may have fallen out of his pocket, or his son may have grabbed the phone and put it in the car.
What, if anything, did he say about whether he, on purpose, hid that phone under the car seat?
No, he said he didn't realize this until after Sadie had left and he realized the phone was gone.
What, if anything, did the defendant say about how...
I want to just chime in and say that is consistent with how he explained it too when he was being investigated or interrogated by the police. That is consistent with how Zach remembered it, explained it. So, I mean, there's nothing inconsistent about what Zach says. It's just that everything that he says, they spin it into he's stalking them. So, I don't know.
How he managed to figure out where that phone was then located after it was in Sadie Beecham's car in that location.
Mr. Anderson said he contacted the phone provider, Cricket, and Cricket told him that the phone pinged in North Kenosha.
What, if anything, did the defendant tell you about having loaded an app on his electronics that would, in fact, trace the exact location of that phone prior to losing the phone? What, if anything, did he tell you about that?
He said nothing about it.
What, if anything, did he offer to you regarding indicating that on the date that Sadie discovered that phone, that he actually had access to that app to be able to discover where the phone was using the app in his own electronics. Did he mention any of that to you?
He said nothing to that.
Did you ask what, if anything, did you ask the defendant about having been to Sadie's home during the early morning hours over the last few weeks? Did you ask him that question?
Yes, I asked him if he had been to Ms. Beecham's house at any point during the early morning hours.
Let me just stop you for a second. And did they live together at that time?
No.
And per your investigation, was he welcome at that house in the early morning hours?
No.
Okay. So when you asked him
That I don't believe is true, because from all other accounts that we've read, Zach had every reason, like, he had an amicable relationship with Sadie, and she let him come over and do the laundry. And I mean, they were still like fighting or whatever, arguing back together off and on. And then, you know, after they broke up for the final time and she kicked him out of the house or whatever, he was still allowed to come back to the house and hang out with the kids whenever he wanted, as long as he gave her a heads up. And he was trying to do that the week that Sadie had just up and left to go on a trip to Mexico with who I still don't know. I think it came out somewhere that she went with some friends, but I also kind of wonder if she went with Rosalio, and they only knew each other for like 3 months, so I don't know. But regardless, she went to Mexico and had her friend Rebecca Jekyll do the babysitting for that week. Meanwhile, Zach had no clue that his kids were at home being watched by this person, this best friend of Sadie's, who Zach did not get along with. Zach, I'm sure, would have been happy to take the kids for a week, you know, I mean, to spend more time with them or whatever. So I don't know why Sadie just up and left, went to Mexico without telling Zach. And there were a lot of times where she was doing things like that and going to the bars and just leaving the kids home alone, which was another reason why Zach had given their daughter, the oldest, O, or OA, as they've been calling her initials, he gave her a phone to record and make any kind of documentation of their mother mistreating the kids. She was not treating them well. She was yelling at them and getting in rages where she would scream and yell at them and whatnot. So it's all just he said, she said at this point. So how do they just take one person's word for it and not investigate the rest? That's my biggest question. But anyways, here we go. Let's keep moving on.
that question, it was a specific question about in that context. Is that true?
True.
And what did he first offer up to you as his explanation for a visit to her home in the early morning hours? What was his first explanation?
He said there was a time when he had picked up a couch late one night and he was dropping the couch off there late.
Go ahead. And did you then repeat the question, ask him again, and ask if he had his kids along on any occasion? Did you ask him that?
Yes, I asked him if there was another time when he had his children that he went there.
And then did he offer that he had?
Yes.
Could he remember the date, as best you remember?
No.
And which children did he claim he had taken along with him?
All three of his children.
Okay, so he has a couple of twins who are younger, and then a daughter who's 10, 11, 12, something like that?
Correct. He said he had taken his daughter as well as the two twin boys.
Was it at night?
Yes.
Did he indicate why he felt a need to take his children? He had the children with him, is that what you're saying?
Yes.
So why did he indicate he felt he had a need to take his children when...
This is the incident where he was supposedly having Sadie, or not Sadie, having their daughter look in on the window on Sadie and Rosalio. This is the night that he supposedly broke into his car and everything too.
Sadie Beecham would have not been caring for the children.
So he, first he said there was a car in the driveway, and then he stated he had a premonition that there was someone at her house.
And at that point, were these two in a marriage, as far as you know?
No.
Were they in a situation where any of the children would be at Sadie's home?
No.
Okay, so he and the children drive to her home, per his report? Is that right?
Correct.
And at what does he indicate happens when he is at that residence?
So he said when he pulls in the driveway, there's a vehicle there with Colorado license plates.
And let me stop you. Does Rosalio Gutierrez have Colorado license plates on his vehicle that you saw at his residence when you discovered he was gone?
Yes, he's a white Ford Explorer with Colorado license plates.
Okay, so what else did he say?
He said he got out of the vehicle and looked through a window.
Look through a window through a window at the vehicle?
Looked through a window at the house.
Okay, and whose home is he speaking of?
Sadie Beecham.
Did he say he saw some things inside?
Yes, he said he saw them on the couch.
Okay. And did he indicate...
So he's not in denial that he did this with his kids. He admitted it to the police. If you were stalking your ex, would you tell them that that's what you were doing? I don't know. It just doesn't make sense.
whether any of the children were also involved in looking in the windows?
Yes, he said his daughter came out of the car and looked through the window.
And did he indicate that he had that was something he was a part of in some fashion?
He had told me his daughter did this because she wanted to.
And did you at some point ask the defendant whether he recorded any using any devices of his at Sadie's residence when he and his daughter were there looking in windows?
Yes, he denied recording anything, although he did admit to having a cell phone in his possession at the time that he used the lights on because it was dark.
And was it his regular cell phone?
I'm going to object as far as foundation.
Did he? I'll ask you again. I'll clarify. Yeah. Did the defendant explain to you that he had more than one phone that he was using on a fairly regular basis?
Yes.
Okay. And did he describe one as his primary phone and another as his secondary phone?
I guess, Judge, I've been lenient, but all these questions have been extremely leading. So I'm going to object to leading and ask and that it not be leading.
Yeah.
Leading. Lots of leading.
I apologize. I was just doing it in this situation. I was just doing it because it was a foundational question. So, but
It's just been like 5 minutes of foundational questions then.
So, if you can rephrase.
what do you recall about whatever he told you about these phones?
He had two phones, one he used primarily for calling.
And what, if anything, did he say about doing any recording using any devices on this particular date?
He did nothing. No recordings.
At some point, did you begin to ask questions regarding a new boyfriend of Sadie's?
I did.
And what, if anything, was the defendant's discussion with you when you first brought up this individual in terms of things like whether he knew his name, a general discussion of what he appeared to know about this new boyfriend?
He said he found out about the new boyfriend through his daughter as well as a grandmother. Grandmother had shown daughter a Facebook profile of the subject, and that's how he found out who he was. I asked him what his name was, and Mr. Anderson said I believed it was Junior, and that his last name started with a G, and that he was a Mexican.
And what, if anything, did the defendant ever tell you about the fact that in his own phone he had well, let me stop. Okay, so did the defendant ever reveal to you that he actually did know the full name of the individual that Sadie was dating? Did he ever tell you, yeah, I know the guy's name?
No.
Now, at some point, did you begin to focus on the vehicle that the defendant may have driven at various times that you were interested in?
Yes.
And what vehicle specifically were you interested in regards to your interview with him?
I asked him about the Chrysler minivan that was parked in his driveway.
And what do you recall about the defendant's response when you first suggested anything to the effect that he was a driver of the van?
He described the minivan as either being black or blue or something, and that was his words. He also indicated that he doesn't drive it much, and that it's basically there for the taking.
Did he describe to you that he drove a different vehicle, if you know?
Yeah, the Audi. He mentioned the Audi.
Okay. And
Well, his Audi was his
what,
main...
if anything, did he say about whether he had ever...
Sorry, thought I paused that. His Audi was his main vehicle. However, he used his truck for work. So if he said he didn't use it, like, he probably meant, like, besides, for work stuff. And, whoops, what was I going to say? And at the time, his girlfriend, Christine Remsburg, at the time, her car was having issues, so he let her drive the Audi. So he was driving the minivan for a little bit of time there, but, I mean, if you don't think of it as your main car, why would you say, oh yeah, I drive it all the time? I don't know.
been in Kenosha at a time that Sadie had been there?
He said he couldn't remember the last time he was in Kenosha.
Period?
Period.
Okay.
He did mention that he plays board games with his brother, and they may have been in Kenosha, but he didn't recall ever being in the city of Kenosha.
And in connection with being there because Sadie was there, what, if anything, did he tell you about that?
I'm sorry, repeat that?
Yeah, did he indicate that he ever followed Sadie down here to Kenosha?
No.
At some point, did you direct your questioning to whether anything had ever been taken from Rosalio Gutierrez's vehicle, that truck?
Yes.
And what, if anything, did the defendant tell you about whether he had taken any items from the vehicle of Rosalio Gutierrez?
He told me to spare the accusations. He's already been accused of this, and that it didn't happen.
And what, if anything, did the defendant offer to you that in one of his phones there is a screenshot of, in fact, a registration document regarding that truck?
Nothing.
What, if anything, did the defendant say to you regarding whether he had any jealousy towards the fact that Sadie had a new relationship?
He had admitted to me that he did have some jealousy, however, spun that and said that Sadie was the one that was jealous of him.
And did you, what, if anything...
I think they both were jealous of each other's whatevers, and I think they both, one or the other, really likes drama. And I have a feeling that it's Shady Sadie who likes drama. I just get that feeling, that vibe from the stories that we've, from the text messages and the things that we've read through already. I just have that feeling that, I feel like she likes to have drama and attention on her. So she probably, I'm going to stop it there. I don't want to keep, insinuating things, but I just have that feeling. I'll just leave it at that. I have a feeling I know a lot of people who were like that, and I just kind of get that vibe. Anyways, as far as the two of them, I just think that they had an on again, off again, like toxic thing. And probably because one of them really likes drama. That was where I was going with that, is that you can't be in a healthy relationship, a positive, healthy relationship, if one or the other is constantly, criticizing or unhappy or making trouble, making, mountains out of molehills and constantly having, dramatic blowouts over the littlest things. Trust me, I know. I used to be married to someone who did all that. So it's very, it's kind of easy to see. It's easy to spot, having had that experience anyways. So that's kind of what I think is going on here. That's just my opinion. This is speculation. I could be totally 100% wrong, but that's kind of my take on everything so far.
Did you ask whether these two individuals, meaning the defendant and Rosalio, whether he had ever seen Rosalio?
I did. I asked him how many times he had seen the subject he was referring to, and he had told me it was just the one time when he peered into that window.
So what, if anything, did the defendant offer you about about his phone being in Kenosha on May 13th, which would be a different time than the time that you are speaking of? What, if anything, did he offer about that?
Nothing.
What, if anything, did he offer to you regarding the idea that he was texting Sadie, directly quoting things that Rosalio was telling Sadie in Rosalio's residence on May 13th in Kenosha?
He said nothing.
And we have no proof that actually happened. We have Sadie's word on that. We don't have an actual... nothing corroborates that. We don't have the conversation on video of Rosalio and Sadie saying whatever it was that he texted back. So we have no idea that it's actually true. It's coming from a source that I don't believe.
So as to May 13th in Kenosha, what, if anything, did the defendant say at all about that in the context of perhaps being a second time he had seen Mr. Gutierrez?
It was never mentioned.
At some point, did you bring up an individual named Steve Lentz, or did the defendant bring up a person named Stephen Lentz to you?
Yes.
And just so we understand, who is Stephen Lentz?
I'm going to skip. That was a friend of Zach's. Let me try to skip through some more.
I'm not aware it's registered in Wisconsin, or that
Well,
that's what we're talking
that's
about.
not what your objection is.
I'll rephrase the question to a Colorado registration, if that would.
Let's see where we are. Okay, no further questions. We're going to move
Yes, thank
on.
you, Judge. Detective, I'm just going to start off with
Cross.
some follow-up on this interview that you had with Mr. Anderson, since that was just the last thing you talked about.
Sure.
You had testified just now that you had asked him about taking the registration from his truck, correct?
Yes.
And his exact response was, I don't have his registration card for his truck.
No, he said, spare me the accusations. That was the first thing
Oh,
he
yeah.
said. And then I didn't take it.
If I was to show you a transcript of that interview, would that help refresh your recollection?
Sure.
If I may approach the witness, Judge,
Do you have a copy for me?
I can show it to you.
She's awesome. Watching her in action, she's amazing. She's going to annihilate this witness. All right, let's skip forward. They're talking. Yeah, she's a sight to see.
He was adamant that he didn't have a registration card for the truck, correct?
He said he didn't take it.
Yeah.
And in your investigation, was there a state-issued registration card that was ever located in any photo at all for Mr. Gutierrez's truck?
Nope.
I don't recall.
He doesn't recall.
You had talked about earlier you had reviewed photos from Mr. Anderson's cell phone, correct?
Some. There was 4 cell phones.
So do you ever remember seeing a state of Wisconsin registration card issued to Mr. Gutierrez that was in any of those photos?
I don't recall there ever being a state of Wisconsin registration card involved in this.
Okay. So Mr. Anderson, when he told you that he did not have the registration card for Mr. Gutierrez's truck, you did not have any evidence to support that Mr. Anderson did in fact ever possess the registration card for Mr. Gutierrez's truck.
So I'm going to object as the irrelevant whether there's a Wisconsin registration. This is a Colorado vehicle. So the absence of a Wisconsin registration is irrelevant. I'm not aware it's registered in Wisconsin, or that
Well,
that's what we're talking
that's
about.
not what your objection is.
I'll rephrase the question to a Colorado registration, if that would. Any state-issued registration card
What's your question?
that you never found any information that Mr. Anderson was in possession of a state-issued registration card for Mr. Gutierrez's truck.
I don't know.
And let me ask you a question. You're a detective, obviously, right?
Yes.
You've been working, you said, 20 years in the force?
Yes.
When you refer to a registration card, normally in your day-to-day business life as an officer, you're referring to a state-issued registration card, correct? As it relates to vehicles.
That double blink afterwards, like, really? Like, you can't answer the question?
I guess.
Were you-
What am I referring to?
Sure, I guess an example is, did you ever work patrol?
Yes.
When you pull someone over, right?
Yes.
You'd say, hey, can I have your registration?
Okay.
Or when you ask for the registration, are you asking for a state-issued registration card or something else?
Yes, state-issued registration.
Okay, thank you.
Took a minute to get there.
You also were asked about what information Mr. Anderson had given you about Junior or Mr. Gutierrez, and you said it was very limited, but isn't it true that Mr. Anderson admitted that he had looked up Mr. Gutierrez's information on CCAP?
Yes, he did tell me that.
And you were also asked a question about Mr. Anderson's statements about him being jealous and whether the state had asked you whether Mr. Anderson had expressed any concern about about Miss Beecham dating Mr. Gutierrez. Do you remember that line of questioning?
Can you say that again, please?
Sure. Do you remember the state asking you about what information Mr. Anderson relayed to you as it relates to his feelings about Miss Sadie Beecham dating Rosalio Gutierrez?
Yes, he stated there was some jealousy.
He also stated, I'm seeing somebody else, she's got the right to see somebody else, correct?
He said that, yes.
I love how they only hear the one thing and then that's what they stick with. It's like, oh no, that leans towards guilty, so that's all I heard. I forgot all the rest.
You were also asked at length about what Mr. Anderson said he had done on May 17th, 2020, And isn't it true that Mr. Anderson in fact told you, I don't know, took a nap, probably. I think I went over to my girlfriend's house, I'm not really sure.
Yes, that's what he said.
And then later, he did say, in response to other questions about what he'd been doing the last 2 days, he had informed you that he was tired and really didn't want to blur things together to give you wrong information, correct?
I don't recall him saying that. I know he did say he just didn't remember because his memory is bad.
And what time did this interview happen at?
11:30ish till just after midnight. 11.
I do remember him saying multiple times that he was tired in his interview. If you guys want to watch it, let me know in the comments below. We can do a separate episode on the interviews with Zach and
11
Sadie.
o'clock to midnight.
So you agree that it's likely that someone could be tired after all day and then being interviewed at around midnight?
Sure. Could be tired. Oh, yeah, sure.
You also, in talking about Mr. Anderson's interview, talked about Stephen Lenz. Remember that?
Yes.
And that's L-E-N-Z.
Correct.
May I use the Elmo judge?
Yes.
Thank you. And you said that, well, the state asked you that Mr. Lenz would be used as kind of a eyes for Mr. Anderson.
The state said that?
Well, what? Yes. Do you remember being asked that questioning?
I remember the questioning about Mr. Lenz, yes.
And you said that there was communication between them that showed that Mr. Anderson was asking him to look in on Sadie's house, right?
It's a friend of Zach's.
No, I didn't say that.
Okay, because that long string of communication in your investigation doesn't exist, correct?
I didn't say that.
Okay. Did you see the communication between Mr. Anderson and Mr. Lenz?
No.
Nope.
So you don't know what they actually talked about then?
You don't know if it exists or
I know
not.
there was text messages. I don't know exactly what those text messages said. I didn't deal with that part of things.
Okay. Do you remember who did?
I don't know.
Isn't he one of the lead detectives?
I want to go back now to follow up on some things that you first started testifying about. Primarily, when you first got to the crime scene, you had noted that it's important to make sure that you're very careful with how you enter into a crime scene, correct?
That's correct.
And why is that?
We don't want to damage evidence. We want to preserve it as best we can.
And in your experience, you'd agree that when you are processing a crime scene or entering a crime scene, it's important to be extremely thorough.
Of course, yes.
Now, you talked about
You know she's setting him up for a trap.
how Officer Van Wee, some other officers came in, and that they were very experienced in evidence processing as evidence techs, correct?
Yes, they are experienced.
You said they were specialists with Kenosha Police Department, right?
They have the title of evidence technicians.
Now, do you have any specialists that deal with missing persons cases?
Nobody with the title.
So you had noted during your direct examination that you were an investigator in this case, correct?
Detective, yes.
And role of a detective in a case with a missing person is to try to figure out what happened to them
Yes.
and where they might be
Yes.
and who may have been involved in the disappearance.
Yes.
So besides Mr. Anderson, who did you investigate as being involved in the disappearance?
Personally, I didn't investigate into anybody else. We did look. We looked for other leads, other clues, other evidence. But personally, I didn't take the initiative to go look specifically at somebody else.
Then how can you say Zach did it?
And Judge, I apologize. I'm not going to use the Elmo at this point. The state's kind enough to pull up one of the exhibits since it's already connected. And I'm pulling up what's been previously marked as State's Exhibit 1, Photo 150.
Is the TV on though? Oh, okay. No, there's
150, yeah, thank you.
looks like it's just getting.
Thanks, Jessica.
Skip.
Oh, you had previously testified about this photo, and you had talked about how there's a standby screen on the TV, correct?
Yes.
And it was determined that that was a standby screen for Hulu, correct?
I believe so, yes.
Did you subpoena Hulu to get the usage records?
I didn't. No.
Could that have been something that you could have subpoenaed for?
I don't know. I have never subpoenaed Hulu.
Okay.
Possibly.
All right. And then did you check the make and model of this type of TV?
No.
So you'd agree that there are certain TVs that have standby modes and sleep modes, correct?
I don't know.
If you left, do you have a TV at home, Officer Detective?
Basically, what she's getting at is that there were so many other clues within Rosalio's apartment that they didn't look at that could have further narrowed down the timeline of when Rosalio went missing and when whatever the incident that happened to him. It would have helped to know his Hulu account, the smart TV, if it shut off or had some kind of like timer, so you could figure out a narrow window as to, they're just going by text messages as to that's why Rosalio is gone, because he stopped moving his phone after 10:10 and whatever the first messages to Narita were going unanswered. So yeah, she's pointing out a lot of things within the investigation that obviously they overlooked that would have helped narrow down their suspect and time of disappearance.
I do.
Your TV, if you turn it on, does it stay on or would it turn off after a certain point of time?
I don't know.
Is it possible that you didn't check to see if this TV had a sleep timer or anything where it would have turned off after a certain amount of time?
I did not check personally, no.
And you agree that that could have been useful information in determining a firm timeline?
Potentially.
And then you had also talked about how there appeared to be some items that could have been knocked off, but you weren't sure. Remember that testimony?
Yes.
And you're not sure because prior to May 19th, 2020, you had never been into that residence, correct?
Correct.
So the items on the floor, it's possible they had already been on the floor because you didn't know how this apartment looked previously.
That's correct.
Thank you, State. I no longer need that exhibit up. Thank you. You also talked about when you looked in and you saw some pooling of blood that you noticed a void, right?
Yes.
And I think you said that void was where a rug would have been at some point.
That's what it appeared like to me. It looked like a rug had been there at one point.
Did you determine the size of that rug?
I personally didn't.
Do you have any information of whether any officers in the investigation did?
Not that I know of.
But you were familiar enough with the layout of and the size of the apartment, right?
Correct.
It was a relatively small apartment.
I would say that, yes. One bedroom.
Okay. So it wasn't, in your opinion, it couldn't have been like an 8 by 12 rug.
No, it wasn't that big.
It was more like a 5 foot by 7 area.
From what I recall, that seems to be about accurate.
Okay.
Maybe a little smaller.
A little smaller than 5 by 7.
Yeah.
Okay.
5 by 7 is not that big to put a human body in. Just an FYI. You probably wouldn't be able to roll someone up in that very easily. I mean, you wouldn't have a lot of carpet to roll them up in, is what I'm saying.
And you said that you looked in the bathroom. There was nothing of concern there.
Not that I saw.
You went to the bedroom. You said that there was nothing of concern there.
Not that I saw.
Judge, I would like the Elmo now. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Skip there.
It's been previously marked as Defendant's Exhibit 60. From you being there, what room is this?
Appears to be the bedroom.
Okay.
Like the northwest corner of the bedroom.
And the window, do you see the window in the picture?
Can you change the lighting and start for the...
Right here.
Maybe we
Is
can
that
turn
better?
the light off, Judge. So that, okay. You need the light off or are you good?
I'm good. That
Talk about lighting.
Looks like one of the panes is cracked open.
Yeah,
Okay.
the window's
And
open.
did
You can
you-
see that.
Look into that at all? The fact that there was an open window in the apartment?
Nope.
I didn't look. I guess what do you mean look into it?
So
Fingerprint it?
that window, I'll go back a little bit. That window is accessible from immediately right outside that apartment building, correct?
Yes, it looks outside to the north.
So an individual, if they wanted to gain access into Mr. Gutierrez's home, that could be a point of entry into that apartment, correct?
Correct.
We just saw that the window was open, correct?
So I don't know how many panes of glass are on that window or nothing like that, but it does appear as though the window is slightly open.
Okay.
Yeah,
And that could have been a point of entry.
could have been.
So you'd agree that that is something relevant in the bedroom?
Okay.
Is
Yes.
it?
Sure. Yes.
He admitted it. That's good.
And it's important when you don't really know what happened and investigating to determine every possible outcome or situation of how an individual might have gotten into Mr. Gutierrez's apartment, correct?
Correct.
And you'd agree that that's one of them?
Correct.
Doesn't
You
look good
talked
for
a
the
little bit
state.
about your contact with an individual named Michael Campbell.
Yes.
Do you remember what he looked like?
I don't.
Okay. So you can't remember if he had any facial hair, what his hair looked like?
I believe he had a slight beard. Like I said, it was 2 years ago. I haven't talked to him since. I don't remember.
Okay. And the state had gone into what he was telling.
We know from our Denny motion that he changed his appearance after Rosalio went missing. He became more clean cut after that happened.
You, but he didn't tell you that he was at Mr. Gutierrez's apartment on May 17th, 2020, correct?
I didn't hear that. Yeah, you didn't. I didn't hear him say that.
And when you were with Miss Beecham, questioning and talking to her, at any point did you observe her on her cell phone?
I may have. It's possible. She used her cell phone.
Was she talking to anyone?
I don't recall.
Okay. Moving to your observations on Mr. Anderson's property, and you said you looked into the van, correct?
Correct.
And I'm going to ask you some follow-up questions on that a little bit later.
Okay.
You looked in the dumpster. There was nothing of evidentiary value found there, correct?
Correct.
And you had noted something interesting, that you located lath in the dumpster.
Yes.
And in your investigation, you were aware that Mr. Anderson was doing lath removal at a house in Belgium, Wisconsin, correct?
Yes.
And you said there were other areas on the property, and just in a whole, you did not find a body on the property, correct?
Correct.
No human remains on the property, correct?
Correct.
You talked about the flannel shirt, and if the state would be so kind to pull up that exhibit 40. Oh no, I think exhibit. I got it, Jessica. Thank you. I'm gonna, for record purposes, pull up state exhibit 42. Picture taken.
I don't know.
This picture, you know, wasn't taken on May 17th, correct?
Correct. I believe I was older than that.
It was much older, right? And you don't have a single photo of Mr. Anderson wearing that shirt on May 17th, 2020, correct?
I do not.
You don't have a single photo of Mr. Anderson wearing that shirt on May 18th, 2020, correct?
I do not.
You don't have a single photo of Mr. Anderson wearing that shirt on May 20th, 2020, correct?
I do not.
And you said the state had asked you about whether you searched the house and if you found the shirt. You said you had not, right?
We did not find the shirt.
Did you search Christine Remsburg, Mr. Anderson's girlfriend's house, to find that shirt?
I did not.
Did you search Miss Beecham's house to see if that shirt was there?
We did not.
So the only place you looked for that shirt was at Mr. Anderson's home?
There, the house in Belgium, a tree farm we looked. Yeah, those 3 places.
Okay. But you didn't, there were places that you could have searched for it and did not, correct?
Essentially.
Okay. So I'm happy you brought up the house in Belgium. Were you involved in searching that residence?
Me along with several others, yes.
And
That is the Susan Williamson Brown house that he was working on. He was rehabbing. And they believed.
are you aware that the state believes that...
Sorry, the dogs were making a bunch of noise running down the stairs. They believed that he dumped Rosalio's body in that area, that vicinity, and they did a bunch of searches around that property in the quarries and lakes around there and came back with nothing.
that Mr. Anderson, I guess, chopped up Mr. Gutierrez's body at that residence?
I don't think is an evidence in this case.
I can rephrase and ask a better foundation question.
But-
You have no idea where Mr. Gutierrez's body is, correct?
Correct.
And you have no idea how his body, or where his body is now.
Correct.
And in fact, he's still technically considered a missing person, correct?
At that time?
By some mystery person be relevant in this case.
That does.
It's fine. I'll withdraw the question and continue on, Judge. In your investigation, you were unable to determine what, if anything, Mr. Anderson had allegedly done with the body, correct?
Correct.
So
good at
when you went to the house in
rephrasing
Belgium,
questions.
you found absolutely nothing of evidentiary value, correct?
That would call for conclusion by the detective.
Sure, I'll go into it differently, Judge. You found no human remains at the house in Belgium, Wisconsin, correct?
That's correct.
And you know that this, in your investigation, you're aware that Mr. Anderson had been there the morning of May 18th, 2020, correct?
I know that at some point he was determined to be there. As far as the exact date and time, I don't know.
Okay. And you found no blood evidence or suspected blood evidence, correct?
At that house?
Yeah.
No.
Did you find any trash bags filled with body parts?
No.
Okay. Did you find any bloody knives?
No.
All right. Did you notice that the property was under construction?
Yes.
And did you see that there, I don't know your expertise in the line of contracting work, but you had testified you had seen lath at Mr. Anderson's home. Did you see things consistent with lath removal at that property in Belgium, Wisconsin?
It's likely that's where the laugh came from.
Okay. You noted, I want to move back to Mr. Anderson's property. You said that you had looked into the black van, correct?
I did.
And you noticed that the van carpeting had been cut out.
Yes, is missing.
All right, I'm going to stop this one here. We saw a good chunk of Detective Anschutz's testimony. I want to move on to Lisa Treffinger. She is the blood analyst. And we're going to hear from her. She's the one that tells us that it's Rosalio's DNA that is in Zach's
Rosalio Gutierrez.
truck.
So I'm now directing you to sometime around May of 2020. How many times do you...
Again, this is a direct examination. I'll let her do the direct, and then I'll give you some cross because I want to give you both sides. So here we go.
You estimate that you had done DNA analysis, where you were taking an item and trying to figure out if you could match it to someone's DNA sample or control sample?
Thousands of times.
And that would be thousands of times over that entire career that you have talked about.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Now, can you indicate briefly to the jury whether you have a working knowledge of what the source of DNA would be from a human body? In other words, what are the types of places or things on our body that might give DNA so that a person like you could test and match it?
So DNA is found in nucleated cells, and that can be found in blood, semen, vaginal secretions, hair, saliva, skin cells.
So those would be the sources.
Those are the sources we use, yes.
Okay. And some of the sources that you talked about have particular physical appearances.
Yes.
Some of them are almost indetectable to the human eye, and depending on what quantity they're in.
That's correct.
Okay. And as a crime scene analyst from crime scenes, are you familiar with the appearances of those sources of DNA deposited at crime scenes over your long career?
Yes, I have seen those.
And then when you do results in the lab, are you also able sometimes to formulate an idea based on whatever available evidence there is about what the source is of those ones that you named?
Yes, we get a general idea what they are.
Okay. And I'm going to ask you if, as to any opinion you offer as to what the source of any DNA that we talk about would be, okay, and if we talk about whether you reach any conclusion that something is a match, whether you would please adopt the standard of to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty. Would you do that with me?
Yes.
So if you offer an opinion, would you only offer an opinion if you feel it meets that standard, to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty? Can you agree to do that?
Yes.
Okay. Rather than me asking each time, are you reaching that opinion to a reasonable degree of scientific?
The fact that they're using this reasonable degree of scientific whatever, they're going to have a big argument about this, and we can watch some of their argument in a little bit. So,
give me no opinion that does not meet that standard. Can we agree on that?
Yes.
Okay. So, were you? I want to start by the items that were submitted to you by other sources. Were you sent some? Let me start with toothbrushes. Let me do this first.
I'm going to object as far as leading from the report. I think the more efficient and better way to do it is to provide the analyst her report and ask what she received.
I'll leave it in his hands.
You prepared your capacity at the crime lab as a DNA analyst that you have testified to already today.
Yes, it is.
Does it appear to be altered or changed in any way from the document you originally prepared? Other than a sticker being on it?
Nope, it does not.
Okay. Judge, I move admission of the exhibit.
No objection.
What's the number on it, please?
S-39.
39. Thank you. As we talk about this, does exhibit 39 indicate some toothbrushes were sent to you?
That is correct.
And did you analyze those?
Yes, I did.
And
I hear her
hair
talk about
collected
the
from sofa
car.
seat cushion,
Yes, I did.
and H hair reportedly collected from a sofa pillow. What findings, if any, did you make that would be relevant to us?
There was a single source profile from item D, toothbrush.
Okay.
Item C
Yeah.
was a single source item from toothbrush.
Okay.
Item E, and
All right, they're
In
just
terms of the sex of the
listing stuff off.
for item E1 toothbrush, the source was female.
and were you wearing single source profile?
I wanted her
was
to
in
get to
fact,
the
was
car.
attached to a personal estimate sufficient amount to do some additional chemical testing. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay. And if you don't have that amount, does that mean that a person from the crime lab would never be able to make a determination about whether something was blood, or simply do you not have one of the tools available that you would use in other occasions?
Right, we wouldn't do an analysis, so I wouldn't say confirmatory.
This is about the little speck that they found in the back of the car. I could back up just a little bit.
That you tested and that you are reaching any conclusion that you are regarding.
Yes, that does.
Okay, so as to that exhibit, who is the major male contributor based on your findings?
For item X1, the major is Rosalio Gutierrez.
And as to those minor profiles, you mentioned 3 other people. What can you tell us about those 3?
I can't say anything about the minor contributors. It's just not enough to make any conclusions.
Is that uncommon in the touch DNA world?
No, that's not.
Was there a sample or something for testing? And again, as to X1, that item we just talked about, was that, can you indicate what the source of DNA was? In other words, skin, semen, all those possibilities you gave. What kind of DNA is that one, if you know?
Given that it's a swab from a handle, I would say it was touch DNA, most likely skin cells.
So now I'm going to ask you about item Y1, identified
so that
as
was-
swabs of the pool of blood.
I think that was the apartment door handle.
Which again are the
That was not the...
swabs,
she was talking about
from
the
that,
apartment.
exterior door frame.
She was talking about the apartment doorknob, not the car. I really wanted her to get to her here.
No.
Why not?
No, I said do not limit all this because it's a spray, it's a liquid, it will dilute it, and you want to collect everything that's possible that's there.
And now I'm going to show you Exhibit 1, and this is number 315. Is that picture where you can actually now, at this illumination or increase of size, I'm not coming up with the word, at this size are you able to now see the speck visible in this exhibit?
So yeah, the previous photographs would be called overalls. This would be what we would call close-up. And at this close-up photography, you can see the same right there.
Oh, I'm sorry. I did say it, 315. Yeah. And are you able to see any characteristics of it once you get it enhanced in terms of its size?
Yeah, you can kind of tell that it's a reddish-brown stain on that photograph.
Okay. And is there a shape or anything else to it that was of any significance to you at any point?
It was more like it was a shape that maybe round, circular, more like something that you see that would be like a splash or a spray.
So you can go back to your seat, thank you, and you can use our normal microphone. Thank you very much. Are you the person? Are you the person then who took the swab, or is Ms. Avila the person who did that?
Julie was the one that actually collected the swab, and then she packaged it up and sealed it.
Okay, and then at that point, ultimately, you've seen it in person, correct?
Correct.
You've seen it in context. You know where it's located. You know its characteristics by being able to look at it, and even enhanced, right?
Correct.
Okay, and now you are going to do an analysis of it, I assume?
That's correct.
Okay, using the usual machinery and methods as best you can, correct?
That's correct, yes.
All right. So you have told us previously on other samples that you did a chemical test for blood in multiple other samples. Do you recall that in your testimony?
Yes, I do.
Did you do that as to A1?
No, I did not.
Okay, so why? Why didn't you, if you thought this might be blood, why didn't you do it on this sample?
This sample was so small, I'm like a pinhead size. So again, I just wanted to use every amount that we had available.
Pinhead size. So they don't even know what kind of source of DNA it is. And if it was such a small size, how do we know for sure that it really is a match? I don't know that you can test it if it's so small.
For testing, for the genetic testing.
I'm going to go back for a second to number 311, Exhibit 1, 311. Did you, and I know you weren't the primary person, but did you overall take a look at this vehicle in terms of the back of it?
Yeah, I did. I looked around the vehicle.
There's not a whole lot more, I mean, she just talks more about the stains and what she observed, and she thinks everything is BLOD. Let me grab my link here. Okay, sorry. All right, So now we're going to watch just a little bit of argument between the attorneys.
About the bleach?
Yes, I made the objection. I was objecting during that whole line of questioning about how it was calling for expert testimony.
Yes, you did.
But to my point before about, I want it to really be known that in the very beginning of the state's questioning of this witness, the state asked, when I'm asking about your opinion,
did.
I'm going to ask that you give your opinion to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty. I'm not going to ask you to every single one of those. And then she gave an opinion about bleach and cleanup and the effects that has on the protein hemoglobin. That's expert testimony. We were not provided notice of that, and that must be struck.
And just one final point. Mr. Gravely is talking about how trials have surprises sometimes, and there's going to be rebuttal. Yeah, that's fine, but it's not a gunfight at the OK Corral, okay? And so we have, you have a street fight, and then suddenly one of these people is up on the roof, take a pot shot at him, and we have no possible notice that that's happening, and that's what this is.
Well, I'll think about it over the weekend. I will tell you that my current bias, and I've been told I shouldn't use that word in an explanatory sense, because it has such an ugly identification. But my current inclination is to overrule your objection. But I'll think about it over the weekend. Anything else before I call the jury down?
No, Judge, Ms. Treppier, who is testifying here, has a funeral for a close relative. She leaves for tomorrow. So I'm just asking the court to, in any way we can, allow her to be done today.
Well, you're a part of that, you know.
I'm aware.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Calling the jury back in. Go faster. All right. We're going to go into cross here in just a second as soon as they're done with whatever they're figuring out. Just trying to get past it.
Which were swabs reportedly collected from the cell phone, correct?
Correct.
And in your report, you had noted for item Z that, I'm going to zoom out just a little so you can see all of that, that there's additional possible trace allele was detected. However, no conclusions will be made regarding the allele. Can you explain what that means to a jury?
So that means that there may be 1, 2 location or items that are there, but they're just a trace, and you can't make any comparisons to them. You can't draw any conclusions to them.
And there's different types of trace, types of trace alleles. There could be trace and there could be an artifact.
An artifact is a little bit different than a trace.
Can you explain the difference?
A trace is maybe a little bit of DNA, but not enough, but it's showing up as genetic location. An artifact is something that used to be more common, like in the analysis process, you would get a spike, an artifact, which may or may not have been DNA. It just could have been a blip in the machinery, things like that.
And so in this case, so if I can just maybe more simplify it, so artifact, if you see an allele, that could be an artifact. It could just be a byproduct of the testing equipment, something that you cannot be certain is actually remnants of an individual's DNA, so you can't make any conclusions.
That's correct, yeah.
But when you say something is a trace allele, then you're saying that it is trace DNA, so it is a component of someone's DNA structure.
Yes, it could possibly be from someone's DNA. There's just not enough of it to render an opinion.
So for item Z, the cell phone, you had made the opinion, the conclusion that it was a trace allele, not an artifact allele.
That's correct, yes.
Okay, just to be so kind, and what was the exhibit number on that? 186? Put up on the screen. We're just showing, are just simply your final conclusions, correct?
Correct.
That before you do that, there are a lot of tests and a lot more documents that are produced that we didn't see in those reports, right?
Right, the paperwork associated with my case file, yes.
Okay, so the state's been kind enough to put up what's been marked as Defense Exhibit 186. Can you explain to the jury what is being shown for them? I can zoom in further if you...
Yes, please.
Is that okay? Yeah, thanks, thank you.
So that's what the data looks like when it comes off the analyzer. And this sample, this is a reagent blank number 5.
Can you scroll down? Right to the second one, yeah. So how about this right here?
Yeah, that's the data from item Z1.
And in this case?
Correct, yes.
Okay. And you've seen this data?
Yes, I am.
Okay. And so, I guess, if you could explain to the jury, and I guess I'm going to have it go to page 2, the top of page 2, a little bit further down. Right there's perfect, thank you. So you see the yellow square box that says TH01?
Correct.
Can you explain, and then the other ones too, the VWA, D21S, 211, can you explain to the jury what those letters and numbers mean?
So the letters on in the yellow box and the green box, those are the locations that we're looking at. And then the peaks, that is the type at that location.
And so those are, so under TH01 in this situation, and this is for item Z1, correct?
That is correct, yes.
And Z1 was the swabs taken from the DNA sample from the cell phone.
Yes, it is.
And so you had noted in your report that there was a trace allele detected. So in the TH01 locus, do you see the trace allele that you were referring to?
Yes, I do.
And can you tell the jury what that is?
That's an allele that's very low, and that's what I'm calling a trace.
Which number is that?
I'm sorry. It's 9.3.
Okay, and so that's the 9.3 allele is a trace
down
DNA
here.
of an unknown individual, correct?
Yes, it is.
And in your report, you said you couldn't make any conclusions about that particular trace allele, correct?
That is correct, yes.
But you would be able to look at the locus of Mr. Anderson, TH01, and look at his alleles to determine if he carries that allele, correct?
Yes, I could.
I'd ask that Exhibit 186 be moved into evidence.
Objection.
No.
Smell a trap.
Thank you.
See what happens.
Pulling up on the Elmo, what's been previously marked as Defense Exhibit 187. Doesn't zoom out anymore. So first, before I show this, I'm going to hand it to you. And if you could just say what Defense Exhibit 187 is.
It is an overall of the profile that I developed from item U1.
And what was item U1? There's notation on there.
Oh, there is. Oh, I'm sorry. It's a standard from Zachariah Anderson.
Okay, thank you. And you'd say that the, is it loci, loci, I can never remember.
Locus.
Locus, okay. And then all of those are listed and the alleles for Mr. Anderson, correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay. So when we look at the TH01 alleles, and I'll zoom in here as much as I can, which alleles does Mr. Anderson's DNA carry for TH01?
A 7 and a 9.
And so the trace allele that you had found or located on item C1 was 9.3, correct?
That is correct, yes.
And Mr. Anderson does not carry that allele.
No, he does not.
So that trace DNA on the cell phone does not belong to Mr. Anderson.
Again,
Boom. Mic drop. It does not.
I have an opinion on that. I don't know whose allele it is.
But
or isn't.
the 9.3 allele scientifically could not be Mr. Anderson's.
It does not show up in his profile, no.
The state had asked.
Nope, it's not his DNA on the cell phone. That's what they were talking about. And I think I went to more, about the car. Oh, no, she's already off the stand. That was pretty much all that. We'll just do that little bit of Lisa Treffinger. I thought that was a good stopping point because she is clearly... hold on, sorry. She clearly doesn't put Zach on that cell phone, and the whole issue with her reasonable scientific, whatever, it's it shouldn't be allowed, but the judge has to think it over. All right, so let's move on to we're gonna watch Nerita next. So Nerita Macias, remember, she's the woman who had a date with Rosalio. He was supposed to be meeting her that night. She was supposed to be meeting him actually at his apartment, and he wasn't answering her texts when she got there. She was there late, didn't tell him that she was late. So there's a whole bunch of this.
Facebook.
And do you recall generally the date that you first connected with Mr. Gutierrez Jr.?
The date? May 12th?
And did you begin to exchange messages with him starting approximately May 12th?
Objection leading.
Sustained.
Did you exchange messages with Mr. Gutierrez?
Correct.
And in general, in the early days of May 12th through the next couple days, what generally type of things were you talking back and forth about?
Religion, spiritual stuff, like self.
So that's Narita. The woman who's asking her the questions, she is Jessica Krasaric. We've seen her name, and it looks difficult to say. I think it's Krasaric or something along those lines. She is the assistant DA for the Kenosha County Court District. Go ahead. Again, my dog needs to get all cozy. She's got to interrupt the show.
Help. His kids, his job.
Were you getting to know each other?
Correct, yes.
And up until May 17th of 2020, had you met Mr. Gutierrez at all?
No,
In fact, have you ever met Mr. Gutierrez Jr.?
no.
You indicated that you and Mr. Gutierrez Jr. talked about family and different things like that.
Yes.
What's important to you in life?
Objection, relevance.
Seems marginally relevant,
I would agree.
very marginally. So if it's short, I'll,
Very briefly.
okay.
So ultimately, did you and Mr. Gutierrez Jr. make a plan for May 17th?
Yes,
And did you do that over the phone via text messages?
yes.
Now, prior to May 17th of 2020, did you know where Mr. Gutierrez lived?
No.
I'm going to direct your attention to the television screen. For 344. Ms. Macias, do you recognize this phone number up here at the top?
Yes, that's not.
Okay. And would that be a nickname for you as well as your last name?
No, yes.
And do you recall asking this question of Mr. Gutierrez Jr.?
Yes.
And what is that question that is up there?
What time do you live at?
And he then responds with Kenosha. Is that accurate?
Yes.
And he then gives you a little bit further information. I live right by UW Parkside.
Yes. Yes.
Now, at this point, were you developing a plan for you to come down and meet him?
That day, yes.
And do you recall if there were suggestions about different things that you guys could do, you know, given the status of the world back in May of 2020?
What do you mean? I'm sorry.
Well, let's move on to your next message. Does it read, "What's open" from you?
Yes.
And then you ask around by you? And he responds, "All the Kenosha bars are open." Is that accurate?
Yes.
And do you recall your response being, "We are not going to a bar"?
Yes.
And why is that?
Because going to the bar, obviously you're going to drink. I'm not going to drink and drive, only because of where I work at.
And ultimately, what did you guys decide would the plan be on May 17th that evening?
The plan was to pick them up and go out, I don't know, just drive around, get to know each other.
States Exhibit 1, number 344. And would the address that he texted you on May 17th at 6:58 p.m. be 3709 15th Street, apartment 1B? Is that what he texted you?
Yes.
Now, once you had that address in your phone, what did you do to look up where he lived?
I looked it up on Google Maps to see where exactly he lived. It did, in the beginning, kind of scared me because I wasn't sure if it was a good idea to go or not. But his personality really caught my attention. So I went for it and filled out there. That's it.
And
And
showing you that same exhibit again. This is specifically page 149. In your time, I still have to drop off Ava, and she lives 45 minutes away. Is that accurate?
Yes.
And you respond with an okay?
Yes.
Then is it you that sends him a message saying 8:30 or 9
Yes.
with some question marks?
Yes.
And he responds 9 will be safer?
Yes.
And you say okay?
but she doesn't show up until about 9:40. And she didn't tell him that she was running late. She just shows up at 9:40. I'm here. Like, okay.
And then we get into where he gave you his apartment address.
Yes.
Kenosha, Wisconsin, 531.
She's a slow questioner. Take
Your
forever.
response, water is perfect. And then I don't want to get a DUI. And he then texts you, I understand.
Yes.
So after receiving that last message, do you then proceed down to Mr. Gutierrez's residence to meet him for the first time?
Correct. Yes.
And what map program were you using, if you recall?
Google.
And so did you put in the address he had given you of 3709 15th Street 1B into that map program?
Yes.
And then were you texting him updates about your progress?
Yes.
So I'm going to show you once again up there. We left off with him saying, I understand, at 8:27 p.m. And then at 9:37 p.m., is that you indicating you're 5 minutes away?
Yes.
And then at 9:43 p.m., indicating I'm here?
Correct.
It was a Thursday, right? Is
Whoops.
that right?
I just skipped the whole thing. Where were we? Probably back here. Sorry about that. I was gonna say something.
Does he tell you see you soon?
Yes.
You say back K.
Here we are.
Is that accurate?
Okay.
Correct. Yes.
Then he asks if you want him to pick you up anything to drink, Corona, Bacardi, or Jameson.
This was that conversation.
And you indicate you'll settle for a beer. Does he then indicate to you other drink options?
Yes.
Is your response water is perfect?
Yes.
And then I don't want to get a DUI. And he then texts you, I understand. After
So-
receiving that,
So, what I was gonna say was that she said 8:39. She shows up at 9:43, texting him, "I'm here."
Google.
and so did you put in the address, and then
It just
Meaning you're
doesn't
5 minutes away?
make sense. Here we are.
and
Okay.
then at 9:43 p.m. indicating I'm here,
Correct.
and then at 9:44 p.m. asking where do I park,
Yes.
and at 9:52 p.m. are you okay,
Yes.
and at 10:05 p.m. I'm worried about you, are you okay, and then at
I can't see these texts either as they're being read because the people who streamed it have their logo, which my logo is covering, so I can't even see it either. So sorry, guys.
10:18 p.m. indicating I left. And I'm going to scroll back up to the top of page 158. After Mr. Gutierrez has sent you I understand and it says delivered, when looking at your messages, what is the status of each message that you send after that, if you can tell?
Says unread.
And that's on each of these are unread?
Yeah, it says unread. Unread.
So after 8:25 p.m. when he texts you, I understand, do you hear anything further from Mr. Gutierrez Jr.?
No.
To this day, have you ever heard anything further from Mr. Gutierrez?
No.
Now I'm going to show you a map of the Wood Creek apartment buildings. Now when you came down to meet with Mr. Gutierrez, can you, with a pointer, Judge, can I get the pointer from you? Ms. Macias, if you can take the pointer, if you go up on this map and explain when you came into this apartment complex, where you went, and then where what those apartment complexes.
I'm sorry. I pulled in through the driveway, and I parked.
Down here,
No, right here.
in this area.
Is that where your GPS took you to that building?
Correct. This building.
And when you first pulled in and parked right there, what did you do next in front of that building?
I waited a few minutes because I was nervous. I really wanted to get to know him. So I figured the door is like right here. So I pulled in a little closer by some dumpsters, and I waited there for a couple minutes more.
You're gonna hear she moved her car for like 4 times. It's odd. But she was watching the building, so she would have seen people coming and going.
And do you recall what the weather was like that night?
It was like drizzling. It was kind of like rainy.
Okay. And obviously, you got there at sometime around 9:30, 9:45 p.m. Was it dark out?
Yes.
And so, besides parking in those locations you've talked about in front of that apartment, what else did you do, if anything?
Since I wanted to see when he came out, I parked across. I saw a guy that moved out his vehicle, so I parked right in front of the door so I can see when he comes out, and I can just kind of flash my lights. But he never came out.
And ultimately, you then left the area and went back home?
I waited there a few minutes, but he never came out. So when I pulled out, I ended up parking right here. And I kept texting him, "Are you okay?" I don't know if he was in the shower or married. I did not know, so I left.
You can grab a seat, thank you. Now, prior to that night, had you ever been to the, what is commonly here called the Wood Creek Apartments before?
Never.
Were you familiar with this area of Kenosha?
No.
No. After giving that statement to law enforcement about your interactions with Mr. Gutierrez that night, do you recall having a further meeting with Detective Correa in March of 2022?
Yes.
And what was the purpose of that meeting, as you best recall it?
To talk about what exactly happened at the location.
And what type of questions did Detective Correa ask you that you can recall?
Where my GPS guided me to exactly, and how long was I waiting between pulling out my vehicle.
And did he ask you essentially a lot of the same questions I've asked you today?
Yes.
Now, back in 2020 when officers first spoke with you, did they have you come down to the scene and talk them through anything?
No.
So how did they interview you? Where did they interview you the first time?
At the Kenosha police station. I actually came from Milwaukee because I saw it on Facebook. Since I was not friends with Rosalio on Facebook, I was kind of curious. How come I didn't hear from him Sunday, May 17, 18, 19? I didn't hear from him, so I looked on Facebook, and it said, "Have you heard any information from Rosalio Gutierrez? Please report to police." So I drove down personally to speak with Kenosha police self-concern, and then I spoke with the detective, and I explained to him what happened, or is everything okay, and he asked me some questions.
And when you first spoke to Detective Correa, he didn't take you to the scene to walk him through anything?
No.
But the second...
So this is all very important because this is how we almost had a mistrial again, was because, well, the reason we had the first mistrial was because this particular witness originally said one statement and then went and met with the district attorney, and she changed the statement saying that she was at the wrong building the first time. So she is, remember, she's the key witness that changed her testimony after meeting with the district attorney's office alone with no other witnesses.
The second time you spoke with Detective Correa, you actually went to the scene to walk him through exactly where you parked and what you had done?
Objection meeting.
Oh, sorry. That was a nummy. We missed that, whatever.
The building you pointed to up there, that's where your GPS took you that night?
Correct.
Now, I know that you had testified a little bit earlier that you had only been speaking with Mr. Gutierrez Jr. for approximately a little less than a week. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Did anyone in your life know anything about him?
No.
Have you been talking to him about him to family and friends or anything like that?
No.
Was there anyone in your life at that point that would be jealous if you were talking to someone on Facebook dating app?
No.
All right, we're going to skip now to cross-examination, which I prefer watching because I think Nicole's awesome when she's cross-examining people. Let me get the link here. All right.
Ms. Macias, this is the text message that you sent to Mr. Gutierrez with a screenshot of your maps, correct?
Yes.
And you had an iPhone, correct? I'm going to show you what's been marked as Defense Exhibit 237. This is a screenshot that was in that text message, correct?
Yes.
And in this, it's your address to 3709 15th Street. And it's saying that it's going to take a total of 37 minutes. Sorry, if you could just say yes or no for the
Yes, my
medical
apologies.
reporter.
Yes.
And this screenshot is actually from Apple Maps, correct?
That's Apple Maps?
So you
Yes.
didn't use Gmail, you used Apple Maps.
I used Gmail and Apple Maps. I don't know if it was the second time when I went out there to meet with the detectives, so it must have been. So I must have used Apple Maps to meet up with him, but I must have used Google Maps to go see the detectives to meet up with them for the scene.
Okay, so when you went on May 17th, 2020, you used Apple Maps.
Okay.
Correct?
Yes.
Does she know?
37 minutes according to Apple Maps.
Yes.
Correct. So, in your text messages, you and Mr. Gutierrez had agreed to meet at 9 p.m., correct?
Yes.
And you sent that screenshot that said 37 minutes. And do you remember texting Mr. Gutierrez at 8:24 p.m. that you were going to start leaving your house?
At 8:24.
Correct.
It's around 8, but I can't remember the times. I need to see the times. Sorry.
Pull up what's marked as defense exhibit 236.
Come on. Takes a
Okay,
long.
so the message in the blue is your message, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And you sent a text that says, okay, no worries, I love driving, it'll give me time to jam more, I'm going to start leaving my house. That was at
Yes.
8:24,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
And your plan was to meet at 9, correct?
Correct.
So 37 minutes from 8:24 would be around 9 p.m., correct?
Correct.
Now, in your text messages and in your,
But yet she didn't get there till 9:43. So there's some discrepancy here. She said she was leaving her house and then she gets lost in a time warp or something. I don't know.
direct testimony, you said that you're there, I'm here, at 9:43 p.m., correct?
Yes.
And prior to that, you didn't text Mr. Gutierrez that you were running 40 minutes behind, did you?
No, I did not.
You didn't call him and tell him you were running behind, correct?
No, I did not.
And he didn't call you asking you where you were, correct?
No.
And he didn't text you asking where you were.
Wouldn't that be weird? I mean, it's definitely suspicious, in my opinion. Something to investigate, at least. And the law enforcement did not investigate.
I'm sorry.
Is there an answer?
No.
Could we have the witness speak directly into the microphone? We can't hear it at all over here.
When I
Is
said,
it on?
Is there an answer? Are you answering no, there was?
Oh, I was
not
saying-
an answer, or no, that was the answer?
No, that was the answer.
No was the answer.
Yes.
To the first question. Okay. Let's speak into the mic, please.
So, you also testified about how it was your plan to drive around, to meet up, you come and you drive around.
Yes, to get to know each other. I was too afraid to go to his house. I didn't want to go in there. I just wanted to basically get to know him and just get to know him a little better.
But you didn't text about that plan, correct?
No, I did not.
You didn't talk to him that day about that plan, correct?
We did earlier when we were actually talking, when I was working.
On the phone.
Correct.
So what was the plan then, when you got there? At 9 p.m., what was the plan?
Don't know. We just wanted to get to know each other once I got there and see what was the plan. Either go to a bar, to a restaurant.
Well, I'm asking more about the specific details of your plan. You said that you were waiting outside for him to come out. Did you talk about that he would come out to meet you?
I think his plan was maybe for me to come in, but I would not go in there. My plan was just to sit outside, maybe in the car, and just get to know each other.
So his plan was for you to come in, but your plan was for him to come out.
Correct.
So what plan did you make that you solidified of what would happen when you arrived there at 9 p.m.?
What plan did I make?
I beg your pardon?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that question?
You
again?
just testified, previously you testified that the plan was he was going to come out and you guys were going to go for a ride together. Just now you testified that he wanted the plan according to him was that you were going to come inside.
I'm saying I'm thinking maybe he wanted me to come in. I don't know what was he thinking. But I can tell you that my plan was for him to come out. I don't know if he was...
Okay, so that was just your plan. That
Right.
wasn't something that you guys discussed and agreed
No,
on.
not at all.
Okay, so you didn't discuss that when you had the phone call with him earlier then.
We just planned to just meet up with each other. That was the plan.
Say what now? Does her testimony make much sense? She keeps changing her plan with Rosalio.
At 9 p.m.
Yes. It could have been earlier, but he had to drop off his kids, and I respect that.
It could have been earlier, but he had to drop off his kids, and I respect that. That's an odd comment.
So, May 20th, 2022, you upon yourself just show up at Kenosha Police Department at 7 a.m. in the morning.
Correct.
No one had reached out to you to
No.
come provide.
No.
You went on your own accord.
Yes.
And you
Because she said she saw that Facebook post from Michael Campbell about if you have any information about Rosalio, call the police. So she saw that apparently. She searched for him or something because she hadn't heard from him. She searched for him in Facebook or on Facebook and found that.
remember that when you went to meet up at Kenosha Police Department that you had materials that you were going to give to the detective you spoke to?
Yes, my phone of the conversations I had with him and the conversations I had prior, which was the Facebook meets or Facebook dating app.
And those were screenshots, correct?
That date, no.
You didn't give any screenshots to the detective on May 20th, 2022?
Not that day, because they were going to meet with me again.
Okay, do you remember, strike that. I'm going to show you what's been marked as Defense Exhibit 235. This is an email that you had sent to Detective Pereira on May 20th, 2020, correct?
Yes.
And around 8:26 a.m.
Correct.
And the subject is forward, last text messages I had with Rosalio, correct? Mm-hmm. But his name is, that was a misspelling, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And in there you wrote, I'm forwarding over the extra information you asked for as an attachment to this email.
Yes.
And the attachments were screenshots.
Yes,
right?
now I remember. Yes, those I sent those out. I remember those. Yes.
Okay, so this is a forwarded
She
email.
forgot, though.
Yes.
Did you email yourself these screenshots prior?
Forwarding. Yes, I did. I kept those for my copy purposes. That's why.
So,
Why?
what time though? Did you provide that email that you had forwarded to law enforcement?
You remember the relevance of that? She testified she provided these screenshots as been identified. What does it matter if she forwarded them to herself first?
I sent them to him because that's what he
Not
asked for.
asking about you sending them to him.
No.
Sorry, not asking if you sent them to him.
Mm-hmm.
No.
Go ahead.
Okay, I sent them to him because he asked me for them. But I don't know if I sent them to myself or did I resend them to him because he must have said, you did not get them? I can go back and look at my email. I'm more than happy to do that.
So let's go to the screenshots. So this screenshot that you sent, and it's terrible quality. I'll try to zoom in. It might be that I have to hand you the actual exhibit. I'm going to hand you the actual exhibit just so we can see the text. But this is one where it starts about what are your plans tonight, and then basically would you be interested in meeting up? Is that an accurate depiction of what that text string is?
Yes.
Okay. And this screenshot was taken at 8:03 a.m., correct?
Correct.
So this screenshot then you had taken the day before?
What date is that?
So you emailed these as a forwarded email.
She's trying to get to why was she all concerned and why was she taking all these screenshots well before she found out about Rosalio missing, because that screenshot came, or strike that. Michael Campbell posted the Facebook page on the 19th, so how would she be taking screenshots of it on the 18th knowing that she would be sending it to law enforcement?
To Detective Pereira on May 20th, 2022.
Yes.
This is a screenshot that says the time that this screenshot was taken was at 8:03 a.m. You agree that's the time that's up on the top, correct?
On May 19th,
I'm asking you, what date did you take this screenshot?
I don't remember.
Did you take any screenshots when you were meeting with Detective Pereira?
Oh, I don't remember. No.
I sent those
I sent those the moment he asked me for them, but I don't remember the dates when I sent them.
Okay, so when I'm asking, you don't remember then when you took the screenshot?
Your Honor, I'm not objecting to ask the answer. It's been asked 2 or 3 different ways at this point.
And she hasn't answered it.
The screenshots were taken.
Her answer was that she doesn't remember when she sent them She hasn't answered as to when she took them.
Did she say that she hadn't taken them?
Yes.
Or that she received them from someone
No,
else?
that she had taken them.
Well, how would it be a forward then?
Well, she doesn't, her testimony, Judge, was that she didn't remember when she had forwarded the email, but my understanding was that she had sent them to herself. She said she had sent herself her own copy. So, do you remember when you took, what date you took this screenshot on?
No, I don't.
I'm going to go to another screenshot that you sent. I might need to hand this to you if you can't read it. But this was a screenshot that was taken at 7:10 a.m., correct?
Yes. The time is on top.
Sorry?
The time is on top.
So at 7:10, were you already at Kenosha Police Department?
I'm just trying to figure out what date that I did send them, but I was over there around the time, 8 o'clock in the morning.
So if you were there around 8 a.m., you know it takes 37 minutes to get to your house, or get to Kenosha around. Did you take this screenshot early that morning or the day previous?
I think previous.
So then it would have been May 19th at 7:10 a.m.
Before the Facebook post was put out there.
I don't know. I'm sorry, I don't know. I would have to go back and look at my phone again. I would
Okay.
have to reopen my
Well,
phone.
that's fine. We'll just go to a different one. This was another attachment you sent with the timestamps, correct?
Yes.
The time on that's 2:44 p.m., correct?
2:44.
At the top, the time that you took the screenshot.
Yes.
Because, you know, I think this is common knowledge, but maybe perhaps not. When you take a screenshot on your phone, it's going to depict your
Right.
whatever's on your phone, right? So your understanding is that if that time showed up, that would have been the time that the screenshot was taken on your cell phone.
Yes.
Okay. So you're with Detective Pereira in the early morning hours on May 20th, 2020. You'd agree that it would be physically impossible for you to screenshot this text on that specific date, correct?
I'm going to object to physically impossible. I think it's a mischaracterization, and she said she was there in the early morning hours, which opens up the possibility of a lot of time that day. So I think it's a mischaracterization of what's been testified to.
I can rephrase and go through it a little in more detail. I'll go back to the time you sent the email.
Did you see that eye roll? All right, there's just more of this. Let's keep moving
May
on.
19th, 2020.
Yes.
So not in the morning,
Not in the morning. It was-
not around 7 or 8 a.m.
I know it was like a day, 2 days after. Yeah, it must have been 2 days after, because I was so concerned, like, he never got back to me. I kept messaging him.
I want to go, sorry, I'm just asking about this Facebook post. I'm going to keep it to that.
Yes.
So it wasn't around 2 p.m. mid-afternoon either. It's later than that. You see this post.
Correct.
So I want to go back now to May 17th, 2020. You thought you used Google Maps on that day, but now after seeing your screenshot, you know you used Apple Maps on May 17th, 2020.
Correct.
And when you spoke with officers, I believe it was on the 22nd, you spoke to someone other than Detective Pereira, correct?
Yes.
And you had told those officers that you were outside of Mr. Gutierrez's apartment building, right?
Yes.
And when you got there, you could see the numbers on the apartment building, right?
Yes. No, it was kind of dark. I'm just following by what the maps was telling me, so it was kind of dark.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as Defense Exhibit 58.
The apartment complexes are identical, so whether she's in front of this one or one that looks identical would have to be determined by the address, not necessarily.
Cover this on your read record. Although the point may be a good one, and so
She was there, Judge.
They,
understand me.
they all look the same. They really do look the same. The same door, the color of the door, from what I'm seeing right now.
The taped door looks
No, it's just the color of the door.
Okay, but there's numbers on top of the door, correct? Can you read the numbers that are?
It says here 3709.
Okay, thank you.
So she can see and read numbers. Okay.
It's taking you to the correct address, right?
Your Honor, she testified where it took her. Whether or not it could have taken her to the right address, I think is irrelevant. She's testified under oath where it took her.
Judge, on direct, the state said, oh, you took Google Maps, and Google Maps took you here. We now have that she took Apple Maps on May 17th, 2020. Completely different maps. So
No.
I'm able to go into this.
Well, you just want to make sure that this defendant who was giving testimony, and not the attorneys, talking about
Yes, please.
Respect to the questions by the attorneys. Occasionally, lawyers, and we're all guilty of it.
Okay, he's going to give us old man lectures.
You were taken to 3709 15th Street.
You're asking, it was taken?
Sure.
Were you directed, is that what you mean?
Led to,
Sure, I'll
directed
rephrase.
to.
It's possible that Apple Maps would have taken you to 3709, that building, on May 17th, 2020.
But it didn't guide me there. It guided me a whole different building. That's what I'm realizing.
Do you know that?
Okay, so
How do you know
later in
that?
March of, what was that, 2022, correct?
Yes.
2 years later, you used Google Maps to return to Wood Creek apartment complex.
Correct.
And when you used Google Maps, it took you to the building you pointed out during direct.
Correct.
But they all look the same.
Yes.
So it's possible that when you use Apple Maps directed you to the other building, the actual building.
The actual building. It never sent me to an actual building.
But, okay, so March of 2022, you gone back, you actually had gone back to that location before March 2022, correct?
With a DA and detectives.
No, I want to talk about, the time that you went to the scene only with the district attorneys.
Well, with the people from the district attorney's office, is that what you mean?
People from the district attorney's office. You remember that meeting?
Yes.
And who were the people of the district attorney's office that you met with?
The district attorney. I'm sorry, I forgot your name. I'm so sorry.
Ms. Kazarian?
I'm sorry. How do you say your name?
Jessica.
Yes, Jessica. And it's another gentleman. I'm sorry, I can't remember his name.
Can you describe what he looked like?
He's a very tall gentleman.
I'll say really, it's Mike Gravely.
The district attorney?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Notice Gravely is not in the room as this is happening, as she's being questioned, because that was part of the whole thing that, he had made himself a witness, so he couldn't be part of the testimony. He had to leave the room.
And how did that meeting come about?
He called me that day and he's like, "Where are you?" And I'm like, "I'm at the building where it's."
Sorry.
I'm going to ask the question. She's answering the question. I believe it should be fully answered before we move on to the next question.
I'm gonna withdraw that question and rephrase it.
Well, you can't interrupt the witness. Did you understand the question?
Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Can you ask me that question again? Or
Sure.
All right, go ahead.
So prior to you meeting with District Attorney Mike Gravely and Jessica Kazarian, how did you know to go to that location?
how do I know to get to that location? Because the DA gave me the address and said, I will meet you to that location so you can explain more detail where you parked. I said, okay.
So did you call the district attorney or did the district attorney call you?
They called me.
And do you remember the district attorney telling you that there's something off with the timeline?
Just the map. It was kind of like the Google Maps, and we were just kind of figuring out the map. Why did my phone directed me again to the same location where it sent me the first time?
And Attorney Gravely had asked you to do that, correct?
I'm going to object to ask her to do what?
Asked you to do that? The question was asked you to do that?
It's vague.
It was a follow-up to her answer just now about comparing the map to your phones to Google Maps. Attorney Gravely asked you to do that, correct?
Just to kind of review my phone. And I showed him my phone. This is where my phone directed me to that other building.
But he didn't ask you to pull up it on Apple Maps, correct?
No, not that I remember. No.
And that was approximately 2 years after you had been to Wood Creek Apartments in May of 2020, right?
No, that was like a year ago, 2 years ago. Like a year ago. No, it was a year ago after I met up with him. It was a year ago.
So back now
That's
to
what
the
she
Apple
asked.
Maps. Is it possible that where you were when you met with the district attorney is different than where you were on May 17th, 2020?
No, it was the same location.
How do you know it was the same location?
Because he called me and said, where are you? And I said, I'm right here where I was waiting for Rosalio. He said, this is not the building. The building's over here. And I said, well, you can see for yourself. And I showed it to him.
But you previously testified that all the buildings looked exactly the same.
Yes, they all look the same.
So how do you know you were at a different building?
Because the phone had a little red dot that pointed to me that was the building.
But you were using Google Maps.
I'm going to ask and answer. Now we're on, time 4.
Well, the organization leaves something to be desired. Let me rephrase your question. Let's take it from there. As to what exactly... What you
Yeah, she's not
about
answering the
and
question.
What the source of her information was, and the impression that she formed as to where she physically was.
Did you look at the apartment building numbers at any point?
I I did not really pay attention, only because I was only going by what the map was telling me.
Okay, so then,
And then-
Technically, nobody can hear.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on. It's been a couple of months that the sound has been worse and worse. And it's not.
All right, she's almost done with her direct or her cross. So let's skip to Michael Campbell now. We're going to watch Michael Campbell's testimony. Like I said, we're not watching everybody's testimony. We're just watching some of the key witnesses. So here's Michael Campbell. Michael Campbell.
Is this a map? And
Oh.
States Exhibit 1, item number 320.
Hold on. Did I grab the wrong? I did. Whoops. That was Detective Correa. You know what? Let's go ahead and watch that now.
Is this a
We'll
map
do
overview
Correa,
of
then
the
we'll do
Woodbridge
Michael
apartment
Campbell.
complex?
Yes.
And when you met with Ms. Macias back in March of 2022, which building did she indicate she had been parked in front of? And based on, you could probably say other Google point.
I think it's this one here.
Does you have a handheld mic for him? So,
She did. She said she had pulled up to this general area, and she had pulled forward, and she had also pulled like, right into this general area here.
It's
and
all in
on
this
map,
area.
what is Mr. Gutierrez's actual apartment building that you went to the crime scene of on May 19th?
Right about here.
And when you were interviewing Ms. Macias regarding where she had parked, could you see that the side of the apartment building that Mr. Gutierrez lived on?
So from where she indicated she had parked at this location, you would not be able to see the front of the building. If she was here, obviously this building would be covering as well. And then if she was parked here, she would be looking kind of at this building here. So the only time she would have had a visual of this apartment would be this general area.
So when she was entering the general complex and driving to that building she stopped at?
Yeah, if she came in this way, yes.
And just to orient us, because maps aren't my thing, that building where Mr. Gutierrez lived is obviously 4 apartments on the main floor, 4 on the second floor. Is that accurate?
Yes.
And which direction did his apartment face out? So is he facing that parking lot, or is he facing what I would assume to be south towards that greenery?
And so this is north, and this is south, west. His apartment is, like I said, right about here, and it faces the north onto 50th Street.
I wish they would show him because I don't know which one Rosalio's apartment is.
You can step back over. Did you want me to now begin, Tess?
Do I want what?
Do you want, should I begin now, or did you? What's
Well,
your
no,
preference?
Okay, so they went to break. We didn't even see Detective Correa. This is the... This is Cross.
we also have another Google, I'm just going to
Whoops.
hand these to you. If you could confirm that Defense Exhibit 324, 325, 326, 327, 328, 329, and 330 are all of the individuals that you had singled in on in that third step process.
So this is just, I'm just going to show you a quick part of Detective Correa's testimony here. We saw a little bit of his direct, but we didn't even see his face because they had the exhibit up. So here we'll see his face, and we'll watch Nicole point out a lot of errors or pieces of the investigation that may have been overlooked. We'll watch her point those out, and then we'll move on. We'll end this episode with Michael Campbell, who is Rosalio's friend, best friend, who kind of inserted himself on the scene. And the Denny motion is about him, too.
Yes, these all appear to have come from people, yes.
Okay. And Mr. Anderson was
This is the lead detective. So he's the lead detective. Anschutz was like the lead on site, I think, like during the investigation. And this is just Detective, Correa. He oversees the whole investigation.
not in any of those, correct?
Correct.
And did you investigate any of these people?
I did not.
And these are people that you know were in that area around the Wood Creek. I'll put up Defense Exhibit 322 again. We're in that area near Mr. Gutierrez's apartment from May 17th at 7 p.m. 2020 to May 18th at 3 a.m. 2020.
Yes, they would have been.
Now, you had talked about on direct about how there were clips of audio that appeared to be directions,
Yes.
and that was from the Moto G6 phone.
All right, I'm going to stop it there. We don't need to see all of it. That's going to go into they talk about more like his clothes and stuff. Let's
Not so.
skip there.
Now, to your knowledge, there was a stain that was on the shirt and a stain on the pants, correct?
Yes.
And the stain on the shirt, it was determined was not blood.
I believe both shirt and the pants.
Correct. So no blood on correct
either of them,
on either of them,
yes.
and nothing on the flip flops either.
I don't believe I have the flip flops sent to that.
Okay, because sometimes when you choose not to send something to the lab, it's because it doesn't, from your examination of the items, doesn't appear to have anything that would be worth testing.
Sure, yes.
You didn't observe any reddish-brown stains that were of concern on the flip flops.
Correct.
Show you what's been marked as Defense Exhibit 340. You'd agree that this is a picture of Mr. Anderson with his hands and arms out?
Yes.
Defense Exhibit 341, picture of Mr. Anderson's hands.
They use him to get in a
On
lot
the
of
pointer
exhibits.
finger, is that what you Okay.
There's no injuries. He testifies
Defense Exhibit
to.
344 appears to be a picture of
Sorry, I hate when creators do that, where that's going and they're still talking. I was trying to pause it. It didn't. So he basically testifies that Zach had no injuries on him. There was no DNA or anything, any kind of stains or anything on Zach's clothing. So when he was arrested, that's one of the, they took the images. They used Detective Correa, both sides actually used him to get in a lot of exhibits because he's the lead detective, so he's a good guy to approve, like, did this come in under your investigation? So he wasn't even on for very long. So we're going to skip now to Michael Campbell. I'm going to give more time for him. So let me grab that link and paste and go.
Began to have contact with a person named Eileen Knoll.
Yes.
Okay. And do you remember how that, what means of contact? Was that in person, by phone, by text? How was that happening, if you recall?
By text?
So I'm going to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 244.
Sorry.
our analysis and
Daydreaming.
Well,
determines.
I'm sorry, I'm cutting you off.
It's fine.
But,
It's just-
for me, I'm not going to start at the standpoint of looking at it as harmless error. It's error whether it's harmless or not. And in fact, what is harmless in one case may not be harmless in another. And when you get into a confrontation violation was a harmless analysis.
Sure. I will just
harmless error.
I will let the court read it. The facts of this case are significantly different than the facts here. I still don't know what this is in relation to as what the state's attempting to introduce. So I'll let the court read it, and then the state can inform us what statements it's looking to introduce, and then we can have a discussion on the issue.
I'm assuming, and perhaps I oughtn't do that, especially in my job, that you're offering this with respect to the statement attributed to Mr. Gutierrez about the entry into his truck.
Yes, and who did that, correct?
Right.
Yes, obviously.
What happened to Michael I'm so confused. Did I screw up the link? I think I did. Let me redo that. I did. Okay.
Began to have contact with a person named Eileen Knoll.
Yes.
And do you remember how that, what means of contact? Was that in person, by phone, by text? How was that happening, if you recall?
By text?
Where you're located? that a text was received by you.
Does it have a time? Yes. Yes.
And what's the time on there?
2:09.
And is that on May 19th?
Yes.
Okay. So would that be 2:09 in the afternoon?
Yes.
Okay. And is this a copy of the text you first received from? Regarding Rosalio Gutierrez.
Yes.
And could you read that text?
I was talking on mute. Just realized. So if he arrived at 2:19, or got the text from Eileen Knoll at 2:19 regarding his friend being, missing, then he couldn't have posted that on Facebook until after 2:19, which means how did Narita know to start saving her text messages on the 18th? Her screenshots.
For the jury, can you see it while I read it?
Yes.
Okay, so just in case they're having any trouble reading it, could you read the text you received?
Hi, Mike. Sorry to bother you. Have you heard from Rosalio the last couple of days? I've tried to call, but go straight to voicemail.
Okay, so do you recall getting that particular text?
Yes.
And then ask you about this text, starting at the top. And again, this is the State's Exhibit 242 on the second page. And you get a follow-up text at what looks like
I'm just going to object and interrupt. Previously, the state had said they're looking at Exhibit 244, so is this 244 242?
I apologize. It says State 244. Did I misstate the number earlier?
Just now, you said 242.
Apologize. So again, State 244. Did you get a text at 208:55?
Yes.
Okay. Was the prior text 208:47 that I showed you just a minute ago?
Yes.
All right. Is this again a text to you?
Yes.
And what does this text say, if you could read it?
This is Eileen, by the way.
Okay. And then you read it at 209.
Now remember, as we're watching this, he's the Denny motion guy. So as he's being asked questions, think about that he could be the suspect.
Yes.
All right. Then if I proceed further, there's blue and there's green. Does the green appear to be your answer?
Yes.
Is that again to Eileen Knoll?
Yes.
And did you send that at 209:55?
Yes.
Okay. And what did you respond to Eileen Knoll at that 209:55 again on the 19th of May?
I seen him Saturday. Is everything okay?
And then did Ms. Knoll then respond to you at that to that text?
Yes.
And is that a text that where it appears to have been sent to you at 2:11 p.m., 2:32 p.m. on May 19th?
Yes.
What does that text say in response to your text?
I was checking to see if he was able to get the lights installed in that other unit in Hall.
And then if we go on, again, this is State's Exhibit 244. Now this is page 3 of the submission. Does Eileen Knoll text you some additional information?
Yes.
Does it appear that text occurs at 2:11 p.m. and 55 seconds, again, May 19th?
Yes.
What does Eileen Knoll now communicate to you in this text?
Just making sure he's okay. Not like him to have his phone off.
Do you agree that it wasn't like him to have his phone off?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to ask you to take a look at the green. Again, are those your responses in the context of what we're showing?
Yep.
Okay. Let's see if I can orient that. And so is that an answer that you sent to Eileen Knoll, again, 2:12 p.m. and 59 seconds on May 19th?
Yes.
Okay, so what do you tell Eileen Knoll?
I'm going to do some detective work.
And then at that point, does Eileen Knoll respond to you at 2:20 and 41 seconds, again, May 19th?
Yes.
What does she say?
Okay, thanks. Just making sure he's okay.
Okay. So to the extent you remember, what, if any, detective work did you do at that time? What's the next thing you did?
We went home. I went home and spoke with my girlfriend and told her about the situation, and she started looking stuff up. Public information.
Before you did that, did you go to the scene? Did you go to Rosalio's house?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay. So when I asked what happened next, after you said, okay, I'm going to do some detective work, had you been to the scene yet at that time?
No.
Okay. So then, how long would you estimate it was from the last text sent to you, 2:20 p.m., how long was it before you went over to Rosalio's house after that text from Eileen?
Within the hour for sure, because I live very close to him.
Okay. So, and then you indicated what happened when you went over. We talked about that yesterday, correct? Did you testify to that previously yesterday?
Yes.
Okay. Now, after being at the scene, did you come to believe, based on being at the scene, that Rosalio Gutierrez was missing?
I'm going to object as far as his opinion to whether an individual is missing. It's being speculative.
again, I believe he receives information that causes him to do things next. So he has a short interaction. At that point, he believes. Okay, go ahead. Did you come to believe that Rosalio was missing based on what was occurring at the scene?
Yeah.
Okay, as opposed to there being a dead body in there.
Objection, argumentative. And leading and speculative. This witness did not go into Mr. Gutierrez's apartment.
Rephrase your question.
What did you perceive when you were at the scene and interacted briefly at the scene where Rosalio Gutierrez's apartment? Did you leave that scene believing that someone was inside?
We don't object. This is leading. As far as did you and then provide.
Did you perceive that there was a body inside, or that Rosalio Gutierrez was missing?
I was told he was missing.
Okay. So after having found out, after having perceived that Rosalio Gutierrez was missing, where did you go next after being at the home of Rosalio Gutierrez?
I went to my house.
Okay. And were you allowed inside Rosalio Gutierrez's home while you were at the scene?
Of course not.
Isn't that a weird answer? Of course not. And there was another thing that he did. Like, he just smirked when he was, like, talking about him missing. It was weird.
Had you made any attempts, if you recall, to call Rosalio Gutierrez on that day, the 19th?
After I talked to the police?
Anytime. Anytime that day did you attempt to call him?
Honestly, I don't remember.
Okay. Now, after believing that Rosalio Gutierrez was missing, where did you go next? Physically, where did you go?
After I left the crime scene,
Yep.
I went to my house.
Okay. And when you got there, who was home?
My girlfriend, Erica.
And did you then, what, if anything, did you place on social media while you were home?
Basically made a post asking if anybody's seen my friend Rosalio.
Why did you do that?
Social media, I mean, it can get spread, you know, so I just was concerned.
Okay. What were you hoping to accomplish? What were you hoping to have happen?
Somebody knows where he's at.
Okay. And after having posted that, were you in contact with somebody that you knew who ended up arriving at the residence?
Yes.
Who was that?
Brandon
And what's Brandon's last name, if you can tell us?
Hendrickson.
And if you can estimate in a general sense, what time did Brandon Hendrickson arrive?
Probably like 3-ish, 4-ish, somewhere around in there. I mean, I don't have an exact time.
And when he arrived, what did you discuss with Brandon Hendrickson?
Basically, let's go talk to the guy.
And at some point, were you present when some determination was tried to be made about this? First of all, when you say the guy, when you originally arrived home, did you know the name of any guy to look for, a specific name?
Maybe first name, just because of prior conversations I've had with Rosalio. But until, obviously, Erica was looking stuff up, that's when I knew first and last.
Who's Erica?
My ex-girlfriend.
Did you also, what if anything can you say about whether Eileen Knoll was also trying or providing names at any point to you?
Yeah, she had mentioned his name as well to me.
Okay, and so did she provide the name Zachariah Anderson to you?
Yes.
Okay, and you said Erica was also looking it up. Were you present when that occurred?
Yeah.
And based on the Eileen Knoll text as well as whatever Erica was doing, did you have a name of someone who you were at least interested in?
Yes.
And did you have an address ultimately that you were interested in?
Yes.
And what conversation did you have, if any, with Brandon Hendrickson at the point that you knew a name and an address?
No really conversation was made. We just left.
Why?
Because I was concerned about my missing friend.
So what were you thinking to accomplish if you had a thought process? What were you hoping that might occur?
To see his reaction to, conversation that I'm having with him and, just kind of figure it out myself.
And you had already spoken to law enforcement, at least briefly, already?
Right.
Okay. Did law enforcement have any idea you were going to go to find a person who you had identified as Zachariah Anderson?
Definitely not.
Okay. So who went along?
Me and Brandon.
Who drove?
I did.
What vehicle was used?
My mom's car.
And in general, where did you go to?
To his house.
Okay. Do you remember where that was in general?
I had no idea where I was at. I GPS'd it.
Okay. And had you ever been to, what if anything can you say about whether you'd ever been to that location before in your life?
I'm a general contractor. I'm all over. So I've never been in his area,
Okay. So you had not been to this area that your GPS took you to? This
Right.
Is, okay.
Yeah.
And did you know what Zachariah Anderson looked like when you drove?
No.
Can you give me an estimate on how long it took you to get there?
I think like an hour, something like that.
And if you recall, about what time did this drive take place again? understanding was a while ago about how long.
Damn it, I keep pausing it because my dogs keep getting up and walking and it's frustrating me. So what I said was, so him and his buddy just get in the car and drive to some stranger's house, drive for an hour to go to some stranger's house to kick his ass, not even knowing who this person is and if it's even the right house or the right person.
Did it take to drive down?
Objection asked and answered. He just said about an hour.
I apologize. What time of day did you drive down?
It was like afternoon, 4-ish, 5-ish, because it started to get dark when we were, out there.
Okay. So when you drive, do you go straight to that location?
Yes.
All right. And when you arrive where your GPS directs you, what happens next?
We both get out the car. We're walking up to the front door. There was no stairs leading to the front door. I thought that was kind of odd. So I didn't want to jump over his railing to knock on his door. So we walked around to the back, and then that's when I seen Zach. And
let's skip forward a little bit.
If I
here.
showed you that statement that you gave law enforcement, would that possibly refresh your memory of whether you saw Rosalio on either sometime that weekend?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm just going to point that.
The guy back there looks like he's sleeping.
Okay. So I'm going to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 238. I'm going to direct your attention. I'm just going to point right there. If you could read those next couple of sentences to yourself, okay? May 2020.
Yes.
So now, having had your memory refreshed, approximately when do you think you saw him, and in what context? What do you know about it?
It was either Friday or Saturday when we had pizza, all the kids together.
And do you believe that was at Rosalio Gutierrez's house or your house?
My house.
Okay. Now, after that, I'm going to call pizza party. Okay. After that pizza party,
I'm going to object that it hasn't been testified to that there was a pizza party.
Didn't make it one.
So then, argumentative in testimony.
after that incident where you had pizza and the children together at your house, is there ever a time that you have a distinct memory of seeing Rosalio Gutierrez in person again, other than that gathering we just talked about?
No, I think that was probably the last time I'd seen him.
Okay. Now, are you aware that your phone, what if anything can you say about whether you gave up your phone willingly and cooperatively in this case when law enforcement asked you in some fashion?
Yeah, I gave him, any information I could.
Okay. And ultimately, are you aware that your phone indicates that on May 17th, 2020, at 1:46 a.m., okay, so
the old man's awake, he was playing on his phone.
Saturday and a very early Sunday morning, right?
Mm-hmm.
1:46 a.m., that your phone is at a location at Rosalio Gutierrez's home. Are you aware of that?
Yes, I was told about it, yes.
That's been pointed out to you?
Yes.
Okay. What, if anything, do you remember about by May 17th, 2020, were the bars in Kenosha starting to open again?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay. And what, if anything, do you know about May 17th, 2020, and any idea of, first of all, do you have a distinct memory of going to Rosalio Gutierrez's home on May 17th, 2020 at 1:46 a.m.?
If I were to be there, it'd be to just hang out with him, drink a couple beers or something. I honestly don't remember.
You don't remember the last time you hung out with your best friend before he disappeared?
But that, obviously if I'm going over there at that time, after the bar, we're going to hang out and drink a couple beers.
Okay. And then on May 17th, so that's a Sunday,
Mm-hmm.
In the evening hours, do you recall where you were?
At my house, I'm sure.
Okay. And can you indicate on May 17th, 2020, what your hairstyle was?
Same as it is now, same as it has been since like 9th grade.
And
He's been shaving his head since 9th grade? Give me a break. That's not true.
on May 17th, 2020, in the evening, do you recall ever leaving your residence that was your normal residence at the time?
On Sunday evenings?
Yep.
No, other than maybe leaving to go get food or something for the kids and Erica, if I wasn't at work, I was at home.
And who was Erica to you, specifically back on May 17th, 2020? Who was Erica to you at that moment?
It was my girlfriend at the time.
Okay. And do you have children with her?
One.
Okay. And what, if anything, can you say about your living situation back on May 17th, 2020?
I don't...
Were you living with her or apart?
It's my house, so she was at my house living with me at
Okay.
the time.
And the children?
Yes.
Okay. And that was true on the evening of May 17th, 2020?
Yes.
All right. Are you and Ms. Saylor romantically connected today?
No.
At this time? Okay. Now, you've heard a person brought up.
Skip
I had a
to
conversation
cross.
with him, I believe, on the way back from my trip up to his house.
So you did have a phone call.
Yes.
And do you remember in that phone call, the detective
Stated that's hearsay.
Do you remember telling Detective Correa that you had gotten information about Sadie and Mr. Anderson from Ms. Patterson?
I didn't get any information from her.
So if you told Detective Correa that you got information about Mr. Anderson and Sadie, that would be a lie?
Objection calls for a conclusion by the witness. He shouldn't have to form an opinion or vouch for truthfulness of any.
A lie is a very, very.
Sure, I'll rephrase it.
When you say something's a lie, a lie is a willful misrepresentation of, well, generally a fact. But there, people can be. If you ask me, where was I last December 22nd, and I give you my best estimate, it's probably going to be wrong, but it's not a lie.
Sure, so you never told Detective Correa that you had gotten information about Sadie or Mr. Anderson from Mr. Gutierrez's mother?
I don't recall getting any information from Celia about Zachariah. I got all my information from my ex-girlfriend, like I had stated before.
I mean, you're standing by that.
Yes.
So on May 19th, 2020, you had never did you speak with Ms. Patterson on that date?
I don't remember when I had spoken with her. Of course, I'm sure she knew me working with her son, so I'm sure she reached out to me. I don't remember when she reached out to me.
So you said you were when you drove to Mr. Gutierrez's apartment on May 19th, 2020, were you driving your own vehicle at that time?
To Mr. Gutierrez's house?
Correct.
Yes.
And what is that vehicle?
2003 GMC Sierra.
What color?
Black.
And that's a pickup truck?
Yes.
And so why did you take a different car? Why didn't you drive your truck to Mr. Anderson's home?
Because I don't live far from Junior. My car isn't the greatest. It's a work truck. My mother's car is a lot more reliable.
Did it have anything to do with the fact, too, about your license status?
Objection. That sounds argumentative and.
What's the relevance?
Well, it's relevance as to the credibility of this witness.
What his license status is? Objection.
The court wants me to give an offer of proof. I can come up.
I mean, if you're driving around without a license on purpose to go beat some guy up, it does say something about the kind of person you are. That's all I'm going to say.
Can't have anyone offer a proof you would give that would change my mind. This is something that you're required to approach prior to asking the question.
So I'm going to ask that it be stricken, so that and the jury be
If you
instructed.
could approach.
And let me finish, counsel. And that the jury be instructed not to pay that they should not consider this question in any fashion.
The driving status is not the proper consideration in evaluating this testimony. We have rules about this type of thing. That's what I referred to in talking to his mother, which have not been satisfied, and there are prerequisites that the court has to evaluate. So disregard the question, and if there was an answer, disregard the answer.
Your mother's car, what is that vehicle?
Kia. I'm not Optima or something.
And the color?
Burgundy.
So when you arrived at Mr. Anderson's residence on May 19th, 2020, you had noted that you first attempted to walk right up to the front of the building.
To the front of the house, yes.
So that was through the grass?
Correct.
Then you walked around?
Correct.
And that's when you saw the two vehicles and Mr.
I
Anderson?
saw him first.
And then the two vehicles?
Yes.
Okay. When you were there, you said that Mr. Anderson had said that he was his brother?
Something like that, yeah. He didn't say that it was him.
And,
Asked him if it was Zachariah, he said no.
And did you give your real name?
I did. I didn't give him my last, I don't think, but I gave him my first.
Okay, and did you hear Mr. Hendrickson
Objection.
give his name?
Objection. Calls for hearsay. What the other person said?
The other person's already testified, and this is also the state. This is just.
No, please. Can you give me the question back, please? Overall.
He didn't give his name, no.
He didn't give his real name. He gave
Correct.
a fake name.
Correct. First fake name.
So Mr. Anderson wasn't the only one not giving real names in that situation, in that conversation.
Objection. That's argumentative.
No, it's not.
It's factual, Judge.
Well, the court has-
Overall.
You can answer.
Yeah.
So when you were there and you made these observations, did you see anyone in the black van?
No.
Did you see anyone cutting carpet out of that black van?
No.
Did you see a fire that was going?
No, I did not.
And were you able to observe what Mr. Anderson was wearing?
I don't recall.
And you didn't see your friend there, correct?
No.
Friend that you went looking for?
No.
You didn't see him there?
No.
And you didn't see any of his belongings there?
No.
What was you had said that your intent of going there was to just ask questions?
Mm-hmm.
So, but did you assume that Mr. Anderson had something to do?
With this?
Yes.
Of course.
And so you drove over an hour just to have a conversation with someone that you believed had something to do with the disappearance of your friend?
Yeah, I did.
With the only intent being to have a conversation with the guy?
Yes.
Well, what would you have done if you saw Mr. Gutierrez there?
Objection calls for speculation.
Sustained.
Your intent could have been more than to just have a conversation.
If you saw his
Yeah,
friend
you-
there, hold on a second. The question is,
If there's an objection, state the objection.
I don't.
Well, I'm not sure that he's understanding your question, and I have
I'll
to tell you
I'll rephrase it.
in the form in which it's placed. It's yeah, ask it over again.
I'm just going to ask a different question. So you drove over an hour to see someone that might have, in your opinion, had something to do with your friend's disappearance, just to have a conversation with them?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know an individual named John Hunt?
I do now,
Okay. How do you know him?
from a statement that was written from him.
Do you remember previously telling law enforcement that you had known him prior to that you were familiar with who he was?
I was told by my sister that he was my father's friend, that I had no idea about.
And do you remember a time around May 19th, 2020, where you and him had an encounter?
I mean, he picked up my sister every day to go to the methadone clinic. So, yeah, I'm sure I had conversations with him.
And around this time, strike that. I want to go back to May 17th, 2020. Your phone pings at Mr. Gutierrez's apartment.
Okay.
But you previously said that the only time you saw him was either on Friday or Saturday. You can't remember.
Objection, that mischaracterizes the evidence. He didn't say that's the only time he saw him. He said that's the time he saw me. Obviously, it's not the only time. He's seen him many times over his life.
Friday or
He's seen him many times over his life. No, but he said that weekend that was the only time he saw him. But his ping, or he got a ping inside his apartment on that Sunday that he went missing.
Saturday. You said that event was, as the state said, a pizza party, and that was at your house, correct?
Right.
So what were you doing at Mr. Gutierrez's apartment on May 17th, 2020?
Like I said, I could have went over there, had some beers with him. You know, if he had a job that I had to go somewhere different, maybe I needed some tools that he had, or vice versa.
But would you have gone there without texting him first?
Objection calls for speculation.
It's his own witness.
I don't. You could ask him whether he did or not, but you're asking whether he would have done so, which is you're really asking what he might have done, which isn't. Well, it's irrelevant.
Before you go to Mr. Gutierrez, you've been to Mr. Gutierrez's apartment before.
Correct.
Normally, when you go, do you text or call him and let him know you'll be coming by?
Same
Not all the time.
Hold on. Same objection.
This is what he normally does. It's not asking would he.
It's
It's habit evidence, Judge.
well, and there are limitations on that, but he can answer.
Say it again.
What she's asking is whether you would typically contact him beforehand that you were coming. I think that's what she's asking.
Yes.
Yeah, normally I would, yeah.
And, but you hadn't texted him on the 17th or called him and told him that you were coming, correct?
I guess not, no.
The state had asked you about Mr. Gutierrez owing you money. You had said there were times, where he owed you money for the work that you guys were doing. Around this time, Mr. Gutierrez owed you some money, correct?
Correct.
Do you remember how much?
No. How would I remember that?
You don't have to say anything for them.
What did he owe you money for?
Work,
What kind of work?
painting, flooring, general contracting work.
Now, when you worked, did you ever work with him and other guys, or was it that he would send you out to a job site and you would do it and then he'd pay you?
We worked together. Sometimes we worked separate on different projects that he had going on.
And in working with Mr. Gutierrez and other people, did you ever work with an individual named Dan Spear?
Yes.
And Dan Spear was another individual who did work for Mr. Gutierrez.
I want to say he only did work for him a couple of times.
Was there a reason for that, to your knowledge?
Objection. Irrelevant. I'm not on notice of any information about Mr. Spear and have no reason to believe it's relevant what his reason was of not being employed.
What's the relevance?
Its relevance as to conversations between Mr. Gutierrez and Mr. Dan Spear, which were included in the discovery provided by the state to the defense.
Again, Judge, that sounds like hearsay.
It might be, but this question in and of itself, the objection is overruled.
So my objection is speculation as well. How would he know what the circumstances were of Mr. Spear no longer working?
I asked him if he knew.
Do you know the?
Yeah, I know that he has worked with him. I've actually helped Dan Spear on a job for Eileen, and I don't know any other jobs that they did.
Now, with Mr. Gutierrez owing you money for the work that you've done, do you remember admitting to law enforcement that the only times you really ever got mad at Mr. Gutierrez was over money owed?
The only time I got mad at Mr. Gutierrez was the situation with Dan and Junior.
What happened with that situation?
Junior had him do a tile surround for $150.
And why did that make you angry?
If you understand and know pricing, that's terrible.
What would the norm, and this was something that he was supposed to pay Dan Spear for?
Right, which I had to help because he didn't have the tools or a vehicle to get to the job.
And how much would the pay be for a job like that?
Objection irrelevant, Judge. What we're now talking about is whether Rosalio Gutierrez paid enough money to Dan Spear. Irrelevant. Whether he has knowledge or not, irrelevant.
What is the relevance?
Again, the relevance is going to come out with detectives and the theory of the defense about not investigating people. There are several messages from Dan Spear to Mr. Gutierrez that was provided by the state to the defense. These witnesses are also testified that that was the only time he got angry. It was a tricky situation. That text message string is a very aggressive text message string about monies owed from Mr. Gutierrez to Dan Spear.
Sounds
well, if you were questioning him specifically about the incident, but at this point, the relevance has not been demonstrated.
And again, Judge, this is the Denny stuff that we talked about before, and I mean based on the record that was just
not
made.
Denny.
Hold, counsel.
All right, that's enough. Just say what you want to say.
Sure. Me?
Please.
Okay. Again, we have an allegation of a named individual where, of a named individual where the basic allegation made is a Denny violation, purporting that underpaying a person for tile work would be something that would be a Denny violation. What possible other explanation would there be for raising this? And again, this is not a name that we've been provided or the court was noticed on.
Lack of police investigation into the discovery into this case.
Well,
this is not an allegation.
What about the district attorney's point?
Point about what? That I've named an individual? It would be coming in with the phone records anyway that he stipulated to.
I didn't stipulate
It's a fact,
Denny
Judge. There's a difference between establishing fact and making a Denny argument. I'm not doing that here. I'm also just inquiring further from a witness's answer. I'm not pointing the finger, nor am I offering to point the finger. I'm offering it as evidence that the state ignored, which is evident because they clearly don't know what I'm talking about right now.
Oh, Judge, that is an improper argument. That's improper. So if every person that a contractor ever has an argument with has to be individually investigated.
Stop.
It's like, children, please stop your bickering. Oh my god. You guys can probably hear this. We've got somebody playing like mariachi music outside. It's really loud. Yeah, good thing this stream is almost done.
That doesn't.
But he can either say you're correct, or he can say no, or he can say I don't understand your question.
But previously said I don't remember the time. Yes. Thank you.
I don't remember if it was before or after going to Junior's house.
But you made the post about your friend missing, correct?
Right, so it was after, obviously.
Okay, so if it was after, obviously, and you say you're at Mr. Gutierrez's house at around 3, it would have had to have been sometime, we don't know what time.
You know what, that's argumentative.
Okay, Judge, I'll move on.
Well, you've got the evidence, and now you're arguing with the witness to extract something that for argumentative purposes. I don't want to argue about it.
You testified on direct examination that you had returned back to Mr. Anderson's home? That you went to Mr. Anderson's home, you went to Sadie Beecham's home, then you went back to Mr. Anderson's home?
We drove past.
Okay, and you said that that was on your way home?
Yeah.
So where did Miss Beecham live, to your understanding?
I don't know. GPS, I'm not familiar with the area. So I couldn't tell you north, west, east, none of that.
Okay, and you said you used your GPS?
Yes.
On your phone?
Probably yes.
So your phone record should show you in those locations?
Should.
Okay. Do you remember sometime around May 19th, 2020, having items in a trailer attached to your truck that were going to be disposed of?
Yeah, I do flooring, so, you know, there's always a lot of stuff to get rid of.
And did you ever have an inquiry from, I asked you about Mr. Hunt before, Mr. Hunt, John Hunt, asking if he could have a carpet that was in the back of your trailer?
Objection. That's hearsay. What Mr. Hunt said would be hearsay.
Well, the statement, can I have a carpet, which is in your trailer, to the extent that it suggests there was a carpet in the trailer, that hearsay-ish. The inquiry, can I have it, is not an assertion. Rephrase your question.
Did you have around May 19th, 2020, a rolled up carpet in your trailer?
I'm sure, yeah.
And do you remember a time where John Hunt asked you if he could have that carpet?
I don't remember what time it was that he had asked me, but I told him no because the houses that we worked on were obviously terrible. So why would he want carpet that was probably saturated in dog urine? So yeah, I told him no, he can't have it.
Do you remember what date that interaction occurred?
No.
And do you remember telling Mr. Hunt that you were going to be taking it to the dump?
What else would I do with it?
Well, I'm asking
You
you.
could just answer the question.
Yeah, of course took it to the dump.
Okay, and did you take it to Pheasant Run?
No.
Didn't you tell Mr. Hunt that you were going to take it to Pheasant Run?
I told him I was taking it to the dump.
And do you remember talking with law enforcement in this case?
Yeah.
More recently? Within like the last 2 months, do you remember speaking with law enforcement about this case?
Well, yeah.
And do you remember telling them that you had taken that to Pheasant Run Hill landfill?
I went to Pheasant Run one time, and it wasn't for that. It wasn't for, I was helping a buddy, and it wasn't for that. I always use the city dump.
And where's the city dump?
On 50th Street.
When had you gone there with the carpet?
I don't remember.
So May 17th, 2020, your phone pings at Mr. Gutierrez's apartment. May 19th, you're back at Mr. Gutierrez's apartment and then go to Mr. Anderson's, Miss Beecham's house. What were you doing on the 18th of May?
I don't know. I don't remember.
Were you working?
I don't know. What day was it? Saturday? Friday?
Monday, May 18th.
Monday? Probably working, maybe. I don't know. I'm not sure.
Where were you working around that time?
I'm not sure. I work all over the place. So I don't have a 9 to 5 where I...
After listening to his cross, what do you guys think of his credibility? It's not great, in my opinion.
I go to the same place for work.
Do you remember texting your mother in the morning of Monday, May 18th, asking her if she could take you to 2 banks?
I'm sure. I have a good relationship with my mom. She's lived in my home.
Why would she need to take you to the banks, though, if you used her car on your own?
Maybe we were going to breakfast, lunch, I don't know.
And do you remember why you had to go to the banks on Monday, May 18th, 2020?
I had bills to pay, so probably depositing money or withdrawing money.
And so you'd have no reason to be in Illinois on Monday, May 18th, 2020, correct?
Objection. It's irrelevant. It's irrelevant whether he was in Illinois on the 18th.
What's relevant?
It's relevant as I don't want to make the argument in the presence of the jury judge.
Well, if you work up to the inquiry, then perhaps the relevance will become apparent to me before. I don't. I have suspicion that the jury is probably feels to be fed quite enough times they've been excused. Ask a different question.
Were you working in Illinois on Monday, May 18th?
Possibility, yeah. It's a possibility.
Did you provide any records from your bank to law enforcement?
Objection. Again, irrelevant.
I was just checking. This is almost done.
Well, that question, go ahead.
I can if I need to.
The question was, did you do so?
Yes.
You handed them a copy of your bank records?
I showed him.
And did the detective ask to keep them or no?
Objection. Sounds like it calls for hearsay.
Did
It's
you
irrelevant. And it's irrelevant.
Did you?
It's not hearsay.
No, it's not hearsay.
I still a question as to the relevance. Go ahead.
Did you keep them? Did you give them to the detective to keep?
No.
And you did not show those to me, correct? To myself.
Objection. Totally relevant.
And we're at the point where I guess we need to have some idea what the relevance is.
As far as the information being provided in conversation to the state and not the defense, and nothing further being done with that information. Because remember, the state has opened the door as to what the defense could have done. And so this is about information that I was not given the opportunity to view.
Well, you can't testify.
We've already...
I understand that.
All right, we're going to break for lunch. Please don't talk about the case during the break. We'll read, watch, or listen when you come to the trial, and we'll see you at 1 p.m. Is that convenient? Thank you.
So, does he not come back? I don't see him coming back. All right, so they do some more arguing, and then they call. They do call Narita's, not Narita. I'm sorry, Rosalio's ex at some point, or both of the mothers of his children. They say nothing seemed off, and they hadn't seen him since whatever time it was, that like 8:30, 8 o'clock, 8:30 time frame where he was dropping off the kids. That's the last time they heard from him. So, all right, so that was part 1 of witness testimony. Credible witnesses, question mark. I don't know how credible they all are, but we watched it. Next episode, part 2, we're going to look at Marquand Washington, who is a cellmate of Zachariah Anderson's, who says some things. We're going to watch that testimony. We're going to watch Rebecca Jekyll, who is the best friend of Sadie, and we're also going to watch OA's testimony. You can't see her, but we have the audio of it, which is good enough. So we're going to watch that, and that'll be the end of part 2. And then after that, we will do a whole episode on just Sadie's testimony alone, because that's going to take a while to get through. So thank you for watching along with me. Please don't forget to hit that like button, comment below, let me know what you think of the witnesses' credibility. And don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and thank you so much for watching. Take care. Bye now.